Part 8. The two top-notch beast kings looked at the flying daggers that were inches away from them. They also felt the supreme power contained in the flying daggers that could easily kill top-notch experts. Only then did the two top-notch beast kings seem to wake up from their dream. A look of horror flashed across their huge beast eyes. At the same time, they felt extremely lucky. It had been so close. It had really been so close. If not for the fact that Demon Venerable Tiandu had appeared in time, the two of them would have been killed on the spot without even having the chance to react. Thinking of this, the two top-notch beast kings directly kneeled on the ground and said respectfully, "Greetings, Lord Demon Venerable. Thank you, Demon Venerable, for protecting our lives." The middle-aged scholar like Demon Venerable Tiandu only nodded slightly. He did not look at the two top-notch beast kings and instead turned his gaze to Wang Yi. This was also the first time he had looked at Wang Yi seriously since he appeared. As Demon Venerable Tiandu looked over, the world changed color and fell silent. The world-destroying pressure that felt as if it could cause the world to collapse directly suppressed Wang Yi and Kang City behind him. On the city wall, the soldiers felt their bodies tremble and had the urge to kneel down. Even Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu, who were Grandmaster experts, gritted their teeth tightly at this moment. Veins popped out on their bodies as they resisted the endless pressure. This was a pressure that exceeded the level of life. It directly ignored their cultivation realm and strength. As long as one did not break through and change their life form. Whether it was a rank 1 soldier or a top-notch grandmaster, there was no fundamental difference when faced with this pressure. They would all be suppressed. A cold snort that sounded like the first clap of thunder at the beginning of time split open the endless chaotic void and resounded throughout the entire world. It allowed the world to regain its voice. Then, the shadow of the 9 suns lay across the sky, shining with a myriad of lights and restoring the color of the world. At the same time, everyone on the city wall felt their bodies lighten, and the overwhelming pressure instantly disappeared. The gaze and the cold snort collided violently in the void. Terrifying explosions constantly sounded, causing the entire space to tremble as if it could not withstand the collision of these powerful forces. The two forces were constantly worn down and exhausted. Then, they finally dissipated into the world. The first confrontation between the two powerful existences beyond the top level ended in a draw. Demon Venerable Tiandu, who had not spoken since his arrival, finally spoke for the first time. "Not bad, human, you're very strong. No wonder you could shatter the wisp of will I left on Silver Wing. I like strong beings and I'm willing to give you some face. If you're willing to surrender and return to heaven-breaking peak with Silver Wing, I'll forgive all mortals in this city." How's that? Although his voice was very calm, it was high and mighty. It contained the indifference of treating millions of living beings like grass, making everyone feel a chill down their spines. The people on the city wall could not even open their mouths in front of such a powerful existence. They could only turn their gazes to and place their hopes on Wang Yi. Looking at Demon Venerable Tiandu floating in the air, Wang Yi revealed a look of disdain. He couldn't help but activate his sharp tongue. "If you came personally with your true body, I might have been a little afraid. However, this is the mere incarnation of your will. Who do you think you are? How dare you make me surrender? Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue?" To be honest, it was not that Wang Yi did not know his limits and was too arrogant. Instead, he was really not afraid of the incarnation of the connate demon venerables will in front of him at all. At this moment, he had already cultivated all 4 of the supreme cultivation techniques, which were comparable to the connate realm at level 13 to level 12. This was definitely not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Instead, the supreme cultivation techniques that represented the 3 kinds of powers had overlapped. The resulting power was so terrifying that it made one's scalp tingle at the thought of it. Even Wang Yi himself did not know exactly how strong he was now. In any case, this incarnation in front of him could not give him the slightest sense of danger. It should not be difficult to smash it apart. At this moment, Demon Venerable Tiandu's expression gradually turned cold. He did not expect that Jinlin Guoshi, who was considered a supreme expert, did not have the dignity of an expert at all. He actually cursed like a thug. "You're asking for death." Demon Venerable Tiandu's extremely cold voice sounded in the void. The coldness in his voice seemed to be able to freeze space. With that, Demon Venerable Tiandu pointed his finger at the sky, and the aura around him rose to the extreme. The spiritual energy in the area instantly erupted, and the endless power of the world condensed at his fingertip. In just a breath, A 100,000-foot-tall divine mountain formed by the power of the world, as well as his spiritual energy, stood at his fingertips. In the next moment, Demon Venerable Tiandu's figure flickered and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already at the top of the divine mountain. Demon Venerable Tiandu stood on the divine mountain with his hands behind his back. Then, he controlled the divine mountain to suppress Wang Yi. In an instant, the gravity in the area enveloped by the divine mountain seemed to have increased by several times. As a result, the ground in the wilderness sank several meters. This was the terrifying aspect of the Conate realm. Conate experts could use themselves as a medium to guide the endless power of the world and suppress the enemy. No matter how powerful and heaven-defying a being who had yet to step into the Conate realm was, how could they resist the power of the world? Of course, that being said, it was not impossible. However, although the power of the world was strong, there was still a limit. As long as an individual's strength was strong enough to compare to the power of the world, they could use their non-Conate body to resist the supreme experts of the Conate realm. However, this was really too difficult. After all, how could human strength compare to the power of the world? No one had ever done this since the revival of spiritual energy in this world. At this moment, Wang Yi's expression was calm, without any joy or sorrow. His body emitted a golden halo. As he trembled slightly, a faint Buddhist aura seemed to pass through endless space and time, breaking free from the distant past and appearing in the real world. Almost instantly, the surrounding was enveloped by a Buddhist aura, and the sound of chanting could be heard. Buzz, accompanied by a violent spatial fluctuation, a Vajra Buddha surrounded by the light of the swastika and enveloped by a Buddhist aura appeared. It seemed to have broken through layers of space and descended into the real world from the extremely distant Buddhist kingdom. Then, it directly revealed its true body behind Wang Yi. Wang Yi did not move at all. Meanwhile, the Vajra Buddha emitted boundless divine light and instantly transformed into a 10,000-foot-tall Buddha body that was comparable to the divine mountain. Then, the Vajra Buddha formed a seal with his hands and took a furious Vajra form. Endless divine might was restrained in the Buddhist seal before it ruthlessly collided with the divine mountain that was pressing down on Wang Yi. Boom! A loud bang resounded through the entire wilderness. The world instantly fell silent, leaving only the constant echo of this bang. Whether it was the humans present or the remaining two top-notch beast kings, they were all so shocked that their mouths were agape, unable to accept the truth before their eyes. As the Buddhist seal collided with the divine mountain, the 100,000-foot-tall Vajra Buddha stood on the spot and did not retreat at all. On the other hand, the invincible divine mountain that seemed to want to suppress the entire world had actually exploded. Countless fragments turned back into scattered spiritual energy and disorderly power of the world before dissipating into the void. The incarnation of the demon Venerable's will, which was supposed to suppress the vast wilderness and be invincible in the Langya domain, was sent flying dozens of kilometers back. The flesh, blood, and bones on the body that had been condensed into a corporeal body also disappeared. The figure floated in the void and became extremely illusory. It became faintly discernible as if a gust of wind could blow it away. The incarnation no longer had the domineering appearance of a Conate demon venerable who oppressed everything and was invincible in the world. As soon as the indestructible Vajra technique appeared in the world, it displayed its domineering and invincible side. Not only was it unaffected after taking the attack of the demon venerable's incarnation that contained the power of the world, but it also almost shattered the demon venerable incarnation. It really lived up to its reputation as the strongest defense technique. Boom! An illusory figure streaked across the sky and instantly arrived in front of Wang Yi. Meanwhile, Demon Venerable Tiandu's eyes were filled with endless anger as he stared at Wang Yi. How many years had it been? Even Demon Venerable Tiandu could not remember how many years it had been since he plucked the Conate Phala and became a Conate Demon Venerable. He really did not expect the human in front of it to be so powerful and terrifying. Even if this was only the incarnation of his will, the incarnation still had combat strength close to the Conate realm. It was definitely not something an ordinary top-notch expert could resist, let alone injure. At the thought of this, Demon Venerable Tiandu looked at Wang Yi with a strange expression on top of his endless anger. Boom! A powerful aura suddenly erupted from Demon Venerable Tiandu's body, rising to the peak almost instantly. At the same time, there seemed to be a void channel connected to the incarnation of Demon Venerable Tiandu's will. Meanwhile, the other end of the void channel spread toward an extremely far place. It crossed the endless wilderness and countless giant human cities before appearing in a dangerous place far away from Langya domain. One could vaguely see that there was a valley on the other side. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled there, while thunderbolts as thick as buckets struck down crazily. Two terrifying and huge figures sat cross-legged outside the lightning. The moment the void channel spread over, one of the terrifying figures suddenly opened its eyes. Two golden lightning bolts streaked across space, and the lightning in the entire valley instantly became violent. In the next moment, an extremely powerful wave of spiritual power was transmitted along the void channel. The incarnation of the demon Venerable's will, whose aura had already reached its peak, seemed to have suddenly broken through some kind of boundary. The aura around him rose crazily again. Finally, the demon Venerable's incarnation seemed to have broken through that invisible barrier and directly stepped into another supreme domain. Only then did the rapidly rising aura slowly stop. Wang Yi's lips twitched as he watched from the side. He thought, "You can't beat me, yet you're still borrowing strength from others. Do you think you're the king of debt?" At this moment, Wang Yi put away his contempt and prepared himself for a battle. He sensed a hint of danger from his enemy. Although it was faint, it was indeed there. He didn't want to have his life ended here again because he had been careless. There was no guarantee that he would always be lucky enough to transmigrate again if he died. When the power of the demon Venerable's incarnation reached its peak, demon Venerable Tiandu did not say anything else. He waved his palms and the endless power of the world gathered, instantly turning into a black spear. Demon Venerable Tiandu instantly disappeared from where he was standing. When he reappeared, he was already above Wang Yi. With both hands on the spear, a terrifying power fluctuated on the surface of the spear. With a destructive might, the spear smashed toward Wang Yi. Sensing the terrifying spear shadow that seemed to be able to crush the void, Wang Yi was not afraid at all. As Wang Yi waved his fists, an extremely powerful force evolved in his hands. Countless phenomena rose and fell around his body. A dark golden light flashed across Wang Yi's body as he ignored the spear that was smashing toward him. Accompanied by dragon and elephant phantoms, he waved his fists forward and smashed them toward his opponent's body. Boom! The sound of metal clashing sounded from the two of them. The invincible Vajra technique displayed its might again. Wang Yi's clothes were slightly damaged in the areas where he was hit by the spear, revealing his body that was shining with a dark golden luster. He had actually resisted this attack and remained unscathed. It had to be known that after the demon Venerable's incarnation received spiritual power from the void channel, his strength had long broken through that barrier. As a result, the combat strength of the incarnation had reached the conate realm. However, Wang Yi was actually able to withstand the attack of this conate realm incarnation. It was obvious how terrifying his physical body was. It could be said that the two of them were evenly matched in this collision. Meanwhile, Wang Yi's punch only caused some damage to the incarnation. It did not affect the combat strength of the incarnation at all. It was not that Wang Yi could not severely injure him. However, although this incarnation of the demon Venerable looked no different from a physical body, and blood, flesh, and bones had condensed on its body once again, it was only an incarnation of the demon Venerable will after all. To put it bluntly, this was a spiritual body, so it was naturally immune to most physical attacks. Coincidentally, Wang Yi's previous attack method was mainly based on physical strength. However, this was the only time he would suffer a loss. Wang Yi did not focus on physical combat strength, so he naturally had other attacking methods. As expected of a conate realm expert, demon Venerable Tiandu was extremely experienced. As soon as they exchanged blows, he determined that his enemy's physical body and defense were unparalleled. Ordinary attacks would probably not be effective against his enemy. Thus, he casually scattered the black spear, and the void fluctuated violently again. Then, the darkest and coldest power in the world quickly gathered. In the blink of an eye, this power turned into a ferocious chain that was like a violent dragon that could destroy the world. It churned crazily in the air and emitted a cold aura that seemed to be able to freeze souls. Demon Venerable Tiandu's cold gaze swept over. He stretched out his hand and pointed at Wang Yi. Then, the ferocious chain, which contained an incomparably violent aura, instantly swept toward Wang Yi as if it wanted to pull his soul out of his body. Seeing this, Wang Yi could not help but smile disdainfully. Did his enemy really think that he could not do anything to the spiritual body? Buzz! A faint ripple appeared in the space, and a golden flying dagger instantly appeared in the void with a saber intent that could destroy everything. The flying dagger seemed to have sensed the enemy. As it trembled slightly, endless saber chi scattered down. Meanwhile, the chain turned into a violent dragon in the air as if it wanted to kill all the enemies. In an instant, the flying dagger expanded tens of thousands of times like a dragon-slaying blade, carrying an invincible force as it slashed down at the dragon formed by the chain. Crack! There wasn't much of a ripple. There wasn't much of a terrifying commotion. There wasn't a loud bang that shook the sky. However, with the sound of something shattering, the huge dragon with the power to destroy the world was cut down on the spot by the 10,000-foot-long saber beam. It transformed back into the chaotic power of the world before dissipating in the entire world. The power of the saber beam was still shocking. After losing its target, it did not slow down and directly slashed at the demon Venerable Tiandu behind its fallen target. Demon Venerable Tiandu seemed to have not expected his attack to be defeated so easily and was slightly dazed. However, while he was dazed, the golden flying dagger ignored distance and space. It instantly appeared above Demon Venerable Tiandu and slashed down. After all, Demon Venerable Tiandu was a great expert who had stepped into the Conate realm countless years ago. Thus, although he had lost the initiative, he still reacted in a flash. He directly controlled the power of the world to condense a shield in front of him. Then, his body moved half a step to the side. However, the power of this slash was too terrifying. The shield that was condensed in a hurry was almost useless and was slashed into pieces. However, because Demon Venerable Tiandu had dodged half a step in advance, the dagger did not hit his head. Instead, it brushed past his shoulder and slashed down. An arm that was completely condensed from spiritual power slid off the Demon Venerable's body. The cut was as smooth as a mirror, and there was terrifying saber chi on the wound. Demon Venerable Tiandu's aura immediately weakened, and his expression finally changed completely. He stared solemnly at Wang Yi, who had not moved at all. Although he was unwilling to believe it, he had no choice but to believe it. Even though this human expert in front of it had yet to step into the Conate realm, his combat strength was definitely at the Conate realm. He even had the strength to kill a supreme powerhouse who had just stepped into the Conate realm. This was definitely a powerful enemy. Not only was his body incomparably sturdy, but his spiritual power was also terrifyingly strong. The golden flying dagger was completely formed by his spiritual power and could directly cut through one's spiritual sea. Demon Venerable Tiandu could not help but feel troubled. His opponent's combat strength was unparalleled and was in the same realm as him. Updates by. However, only the incarnation of his will was present here. Furthermore, he was restrained by the golden flying dagger. Thus, no matter how he fought, it would be very uncomfortable. The void channel appeared again, and a wisp of spiritual power was transmitted along the passage again. Almost instantly, Demon Venerable Tiandu's aura returned to its peak, and he was no longer as dispirited as before. Demon Venerable Tiandu was not in a hurry to attack this time. Instead, he said, "Human, you're very strong. Among the humans I've come into contact with, other than the Conate Venerable of Langya County City, you're definitely the strongest. Are you interested in coming to the heaven-breaking peak? As long as you're willing, the matter that concerns Silver Wing will be over. I won't pursue it anymore. In this vast wilderness and endless territory, you will be the only overlord other than me. At that time, no matter how precious the martial arts resources you want are, you only need to say one word and the warriors of the beast race will fight to find them for you. How about it? Do you want to consider joining the heaven-breaking peak?" Demon Venerable Tiandu's tempting words sounded. Everyone on the city wall could not help but pant. Their gazes landed on Wang Yi, afraid that he would suddenly agree to his request. After all, the conditions were too tempting. The entire Langya domain spanned more than 1 billion miles. Meanwhile, the human race could only defend their cities which were not even 10% of the Langya domain. The endless wilderness outside the giant cities was a huge treasure vault filled with endless martial arts treasures. If it was really as the other party said, as long as Wang Yi nodded, the door to the treasure vault would really be completely open for him. Endless resources would be available for him. Upon hearing this, Wang Yi curled his lips in disdain and he couldn't help but complain in his heart. This fellow's train of thought was really strange. If he couldn't win, he would directly rope his enemy in and make his enemy his ally. So what if the matter concerning Silver-Winged Cloud Leopard wasn't over? It made it sound like it could do nothing to him. Then, Wang Yi mocked. "Join you, save your breath. If you want to fight, fight quickly. If not, let me beat you to death. We're all quite busy. Don't waste everyone's time." Upon hearing this, Demon Venerable Tiandu couldn't help but laugh in anger. Ever since he became a Demon Venerable, everyone had been respectful to him. Even the people in Langya County City would call him Demon Venerable Tiandu when they saw him. He had never suffered such humiliation before. The other party's strength indeed made him a little afraid, but no matter what, he was still a supreme existence who had stepped into the Conate realm countless years ago. It was not that he did not have any methods to compete with him. It was just a matter of price. But after being humiliated by his enemy, he did not mind paying the price anymore. His gaze became even colder, and the killing intent around him almost materialized. Then, Demon Venerable Tiandu pointed at Wang Yi and said coldly, "Considering that your strength is not bad, I wanted to give you a way out. But since you don't know how to appreciate favors, then don't blame me for being ruthless." Wang Yi was speechless. He felt that this Demon Venerable incarnation was a little dumb. He made it sound like there was some affection between them. The human race and the beast race were natural enemies, to begin with. Now, the two sides were in a situation where they would fight to the death. How could they show mercy to each other? How could there be any friendship? Demon Venerable Tiandu's cold gaze swept across the top-notch beast kings who had been silent all this while. Then, his voice that was filled with killing intent suddenly sounded, "Wind-chasing king, let me borrow your body." As soon as he finished speaking, Demon Venerable Tiandu's figure instantly disappeared and appeared above Wind-chasing king's head. Before the top beast king known as the Wind-chasing king could react, a wisp of spiritual power penetrated its huge beast head and entered its spiritual sea, instantly extinguishing its will. The Demon Venerable incarnation floating in the air recovered its spiritual power again and crazily surged toward the Wind-chasing king's spiritual space. Boom! An extremely powerful aura instantly erupted from the Wind-chasing king's huge beast body, guiding the power of the world in this space to gather toward him. As his aura continued to grow stronger, more and more power of the world gathered here. Crack! The sound of something heavy shattering seemed to come from the huge beast's body. The supreme realm that the Wind-chasing king had struggled to attain before he died was broken through so easily. How ironic and laughable was this! This was also the price that Demon Venerable Tiandu was unwilling to pay. He had to use the life of a top-notch beast king as the price to defeat his enemy. He severed a wisp of his spiritual power and forcefully occupied the Wind-chasing king's body. This was why he could possess the complete combat strength of a Conate realm expert in a short period of time and display the invincible might of the Conate realm. It had to be known that experts in the Conate realm could not only control the power of the world. Their body and true essence were also invincible and could suppress all enemies in the world. Only when the three forces were gathered could one truly have the complete strength of the Conate realm. Although the body of the previous Demon Venerable incarnation had the combat strength of a Conate realm expert, it also had obvious shortcomings. If he encountered ordinary top-notch experts, he could naturally suppress them easily. However, if he encountered experts with similar combat strength but extremely strong spiritual power, he would naturally be at a disadvantage in battle. However, it was different now. After obtaining a physical body and pushing his realm to the Conate realm, Demon Venerable Tiandu no longer had any shortcomings. The Golden Top Beast King looked at his companion who had already stepped into the Conate realm. Not only was he not happy, but he also felt cold all over and an indescribable fear. At his level, how could he not sense it? His companion was extremely powerful now and was surrounded by a special rhythm that was connected to the world. However, the aura that belonged to the Wind-chasing king had already been completely annihilated. Only the aura of Demon Venerable Tiandu continued to rise in the void as if he wanted to break through the sky and suppress the countless living beings in the world. Moreover, he also sensed that although the Wind-chasing king's huge body was invincible, it was like rootless grass and dead wood in the wind. It was as if it would fall into that domain at any time, and its body would decay and turn into powder. At this moment, all he wanted to do was to escape from this place and this killing ground. Although he did not know how the Demon Venerable had done it, he knew that the Wind-chasing king was already dead. If he did not escape, he would probably be the next one to die. At the thought of this, the Golden Beast King did not hesitate to escape. However, just as he raised his huge beast leg which was like a pillar supporting the sky, he froze before his leg landed. He felt an extremely powerful aura lock onto him. The ferocious beast turned around stiffly and realized that a pair of cold eyes were staring at him. His huge beast body seemed to have been frozen and could no longer move. Meanwhile, when faced with the powerful might of a Conate expert, the soldiers on the city wall could no longer stand still and collapsed to the ground. As Grandmaster level experts, although Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu could still barely hold on, they had long been shocked by the terrifying scene of gods and devils fighting. The depths of their eyes were filled with shock as they looked at the large beast body that seemed to have become the center of the world. No one had expected that just a siege of beasts would actually alarm so many experts. Now, even the Conate demon Venerable had personally come. Although Tang Zhenyu had absolute confidence in Wang Yi was still facing an invincible Conate demon Venerable. Thus, he could not help but feel nervous. Updates by. A hint of anxiety and panic appeared on his face. He looked at Fang Yuan, who was still gritting his teeth and persisting, and could not help but say, "Guardian Fang, if Sir Wang is defeated, will the supremacy from Langya County personally come?" At this moment, Tang Zhenyu was no longer addressing Fang Yuan as his brother. Instead, he called him by his official position. It could be seen how nervous he was. Upon hearing this, Fang Yuan shook his head slightly and sighed in his heart. Demon Venerable Tiandu had not descended here with his true body, so there was a high chance that the supremacy would not come here personally. After all, the supremacy still had to hold down the fort in Langya County City and restrain that person from the heaven-breaking peak. In fact, the best outcome was if the incarnation of the supremacies will descended like what Demon Venerable Tiandu had done. Although the incarnation of the supremacy might still not be a match for the wind-chasing king, who had already stepped into the Conate realm, if he joined forces with Wang Yi, it was not impossible for them to resist. After all, Fang Yuan had just witnessed how terrifying Wang Yi was. Just now, he could completely suppress the invincible combat strength of the demonic incarnation. Now, he could only hope that the incarnation of the supremacy could descend quickly. Otherwise, if Wang Yi was defeated, what awaited the millions of living beings in Kang City would definitely have a tragic end. At that time, this vast wilderness would probably be dyed red by the blood of humans. The wind-chasing king's huge beast body expanded several times again, and his terrifying demonic aura transformed into an even more domineering demonic essence. His huge beast eyes looked down at Wang Yi as if Wang Yi was an ant. Demon Venerable Tiandu's voice was like thunder as it sounded in the void. "The previous battle doesn't count. Let's fight again." Wang Yi could not help but become cautious. He finally knew how terrifying the Conate realm was. Although the combat strength of the Demon Venerable incarnation was also at the Conate realm, it was far inferior to this terrifying beast in front of him. He felt an extremely powerful pressure from this giant beast. It was completely different from the slight sense of danger brought by the Demon Venerable incarnation. Even so, Wang Yi was not afraid. His voice also reverberated in the void. "As per your wish, let's fight again." With that, the two terrifying beings moved at the same time. As Wang Yi swung his fists, the strongest attack technique revolved in his hands. In an instant, the two figures, one large and one small, collided fiercely. Boom! It was as if two comets had collided in the void of the universe. The world fell silent again. Then, a powerful shockwave that was powerful enough to destroy the world erupted at the place where the two collided. The wilderness caved in by more than 10 meters from the impact. Even the distant city wall was shaken until countless spider web-like cracks appeared as if it would collapse in the next moment. At the center of the collision, Wang Yi's body shone with dark golden patterns. A bloodthirsty sneer hung on his lips as his dark golden fist smashed toward the huge beast claw that was filled with the power of the world. However, in the next moment, something shocking happened. Compared to Demon Venerable Tiandu, Wang Yi's weak figure that resembled an ant only took a few steps back. As for Demon Venerable Tiandu, he was sent flying tens of thousands of meters away in a posture that did not match his size. Upon seeing this, everyone on the city wall erupted into cheers. Fang Yuan took the lead and roared crazily, "Victory! Sir Wang is invincible!" The other city guards also joined in and roared, "Victory! Sir Wang is invincible!" The sound waves from the excited roars seemed to spread throughout the endless wilderness. Wang Yi had already known how terrifying the Conate realm was, but after this attack, he also finally realized how terrifying his cultivation technique was. What did it mean for his cultivation techniques to be invincible at level 13? For example, as long as one cultivated the Dragon Elephant Wisdom technique to level 13, their physical strength could match an invincible expert in the Conate realm. How terrifying and frightening was that? At this moment, Wang Yi had 4 peerless divine techniques. Moreover, 3 of the 4 powers were at level 12 and were extremely powerful. Apart from the fact that he could not fly in the air and did not have the terrifying lifespan of more than 1,000 years as a Conate expert, he could completely be regarded as a Conate venerable in terms of combat strength. The moment the two collided, a cold sword intent suddenly soared into the sky in the distant Langya County. It was as if a peerless divine sword had been unsheathed. It was so sharp that it seemed to want to cut through the earth and the sky, destroying all living beings in the world. The sword intent seemed to have sensed a powerful enemy here and locked onto Demon Venerable Tiandu. At the same time, a group of people was rushing forward tens of thousands of kilometers away from Kang City. Everyone's aura was as deep as an abyss, and no one was below the realm of a rank 9 Grandmaster. The aura of their leader was even more terrifying. He was actually a top Grandmaster who had undergone a transformation. He was wearing golden armor and had long golden hair that looked abnormally bewitching. On his back was a long jade brocade box. At this moment, the jade brocade box suddenly opened automatically. A silver sword engraved with countless mysterious patterns flew out of the brocade box and hovered above everyone's heads. Immediately after, the silver sword suddenly shattered sword light that enveloped the group of people below. Boom! The group of martial artists enveloped by the sword light seemed to have broken through some kind of boundary and directly ignored the resistance of the air. Their speed instantly soared countless times. In the wilderness, a cluster of silver light turned into a silver bolt of lightning and sped toward Kang City. At Kang City, after Demon Venerable Tiandu sensed that he was being locked onto by the strongest sword intent in the world, a mocking smile appeared on his ferocious beast face. His voice seemed to have gone through some special vibration as it traveled through the endless void and directly reached Langya County. Supremacy Ning Jing, do you really think that you can do anything to me across the endless territories? In the Grand Palace of Langya County, the figure sitting cross-legged suddenly opened her eyes. A cold light flashed across the entire hall. The figure seemed to be covered by a thick fog, and her face could not be seen clearly. Her voice was neither happy nor sad. Using the same special vibration method, she sent her voice toward Kang City through the endless void. I can't do anything to you, but if you dare to start a Khanate battle and slaughter the commoners here, I will personally come to the Heaven-Breaking Peak to kill the Heaven-Breaking clan. If you don't believe me, you can try. Upon hearing this, Demon Venerable Tiandu's huge beast eyes couldn't help but shrink. Images automatically appeared in his mind. A white figure was dressed in blood. She held a silver sword as she enacted a slaughter in the endless wilderness. Countless huge beast bodies fell at her feet. 2. A cold sword intent broke through the sky and entered the heavens. In that battle, she had completely fallen into madness and slaughtered until the endless ferocious beasts in this territory were all terrified of her. In the end, the entire battlefield was dyed red by the blood of humans and beasts alike. It remained wet for countless years. To be honest, Demon Venerable Tiandu was very troubled by such an being. He was not afraid of a life and death battle with the other party. After all, there was not much difference in strength between them. It was really hard to say who would die in the end. However, his race would not be able to withstand it. If the other party really went crazy again and attacked the Heaven-Breaking Peak with her sword, other than Demon Venerable Tiandu, there would probably be no one left alive on the Heaven-Breaking Peak. At this moment, Demon Venerable Tiandu was indeed in a difficult position. If he did not kill this human, who dared to provoke him, and destroy this human city, he would not be able to appease his anger. It would also not be worth the huge price he had just paid. However, if he chose to attack, no one could guarantee that the crazy woman would not really attack the Heaven-Breaking Peak. Although humans would also suffer heavy losses and their corpses would be strewn everywhere, the losses of the beast race were something Demon Venerable Tiandu was unwilling to bear. Meanwhile, Wang Yi, who had been listening to their conversation the entire time, was a little unhappy. What was going on? Were they ignoring him? At the thought of this, Wang Yi couldn't help but take a step forward and provoke, who gave you the courage to slaughter Kang City, fish? Liang 1. So what if you're in the Khanate realm? If you have the strength and resources, slaughter the entire city for me to witness. These words were only meant to mock Demon Venerable Tiandu, but it also choked the Khanate Venerable of Langya County. This was equivalent to mocking all the invincible experts in the Khanate realm. However, Wang Yi did not think too much about it. After saying that, he stretched out his hand and pointed. A red flying dagger appeared out of thin air and directly slashed at the remaining top beast king. Wang Yi's movements were too fast and too sudden. Even Demon Supremacy Tiandu did not have time to react before the red flying dagger slashed down. The Golden Beast King did not even have the chance to react before it was cut into two. Demon Venerable Tiandu could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He roared crazily, "This person dares to provoke Demon Venerable's dignity. I will definitely kill him. Supremacy Ning Jing, if you ascend the heaven-breaking peak because of this, we'll start a war between our races. We won't stop until one side is exterminated. As soon as he finished speaking, Demon Venerable Tiandu charged toward Wang Yi with monstrous anger and endless divine might. The entire Kang City battlefield fell silent. For a moment, there was no sound from the Conate Venerable of Langya County. It was as if he was really choked by Wang Yi's words. After a while, a cold voice sounded, Demon Venerable Tiandu, you're using a Conate vulnerable to attack a rank 9 creature. You're bullying the strong. You have a limit of 10 breaths. If you can kill him within 10 breaths, then it's his fate. I won't interfere in this matter. However, if you can't kill him, you can't continue to attack. Otherwise, the Langya County city won't be afraid of starting a racial war. To be honest, the supremacy who was far away in Langya County city also hated Wang Yi to the core at this moment. Initially, she had already intimidated Demon Venerable Tiandu, so it wouldn't be long before he retreated. However, she did not expect Wang Yi to suddenly interfere and provoke a Demon Venerable with such words. Why was it that regardless of whether it was the human race or the beast race, as long as they were an expert at the Conate realm, they were all crowned with the word, dignity? That was because no matter what race they belonged to, as long as they broke through the limits of life, they would be unreachable and noble. They would become the most respected existence of the various races. The Venerable represented the glory of this supreme realm. Although the humans and the beasts had fought and killed endlessly, they would not verbally provoke or humiliate the enemy's venerable experts on the battlefield. This was the reverence and respect that countless living beings had for that invincible realm. However, Wang Yi's words directly provoked all the experts in the Conate realm. Experts of this level often valued their pride very much. Sometimes, they would even start a racial war to extinguish their endless anger with the lives and blood of countless living beings. It was very likely that because of Wang Yi's words, the entire Kang City would be destroyed here, and millions of living beings would die in the wilderness. Demon Venerable Tiandu was still in midair. When he heard this, he couldn't help but sneer. Supremacy Ning Jing, you look down on me too much. There's no need to take 10 breaths to deal with such an ant. Watch how I kill him. As soon as he finished speaking, a layer of black demonic essence suddenly appeared on Demon Venerable Tiandu's terrifying beast claw. It was like a black flame that was constantly burning. The terrifying corrosive power contained in it seemed to want to corrode and collapse the entire space. All of this was completed in an instant. Then, Demon Venerable Tiandu's violent claws smashed into Wang Yi. Ignorant ant, I'll show you the true power of the Conate realm. Wang Yi's expression changed slightly. The power of Demon Venerable Tiandu's attack was much stronger than before. The terrifying aura it contained made one's heart palpitate. It was as if an ancient divine mountain had descended, pressing down with endless divine might. When Wang Yi was enveloped by this divine might, he felt that his entire body was being rejected by this world, and he had become an anomaly in this world. Wang Yi's eyes were cold and he was not afraid of the terrifying phenomenon in front of him. As his body trembled slightly, endless beams of divine light were emitted from his body. The dark golden light patterns enveloped his body again. Then, he threw a punch with a supreme power that could destroy the world towards the huge beast claw, which had transformed into the ancient divine mountain. Bang! Wang Yi simply felt pain all over his body as his body was sent flying more than 10 kilometers away. The dark golden light patterns around his body shook violently, and his determined punch missed. He didn't even manage to touch his opponent. This time, Wang Yi's expression really changed. In his spiritual perception, just before the two sides were about to collide, Demon Venerable Tiandu's 1,000-meter tall body appeared behind him at a speed that did not match his size. This speed exceeded the limit of human vision and sent him flying. At this moment, Wang Yi did not even have time to react. A bloodthirsty glint flashed across Demon Venerable Tiandu's huge beast eyes. His figure disappeared in a flash as he charged toward Wang Yi. He couldn't help but mock, so what if your physical body is unparalleled? So what if your combat strength is unparalleled and you have reached the Conate realm? In my eyes, you're just a slightly stronger ant. The moment he finished speaking, Wang Yi's figure was sent flying by the other party again. Demon Venerable Tiandu's huge beast body kept flickering in this space. Every time his body appeared, Wang Yi would be sent flying. In the short duration of one breath, Wang Yi had been hit more than 100 times like a sandbag. Fortunately, Wang Yi had the indestructible Vajra technique to protect his body. Although he looked a little disheveled, he did not suffer any substantial damage. Demon Venerable Tiandu looked down at Wang Yi and said in a cold voice, "Do you know where my title as the Wind-Chasing King came from?" After saying that, Demon Venerable Tiandu's figure flashed and appeared behind Wang Yi again. He sent him flying again with a claw that traveled at a speed that Wang Yi could not react to. That's because the title of Wind Chasing is a realm that represents the extreme speed of this world. Wang Yi shook off the soil on his body and jumped out of the deep pit. After being bombarded by Demon Venerable Tiandu for so long, he had already understood that he was really no match for him in terms of speed. However, one should not forget that Wang Yi did not only rely on his physical body. He had many offensive methods. Looking at Demon Venerable Tiandu's unrestrained expression, the corners of Wang Yi's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a meaningful smile. Buzz! His body shook in the void as the Vajra Buddha tore through space again. The Vajra Buddha descended behind Wang Yi with endless Buddhist light that instantly enveloped Wang Yi. Wang Yi revealed a look of disdain and sneered. "Extreme speed in the world. Open your eyes wide and watch how I break through it." With that, Wang Yi waved his fists again and performed an invincible attack. In the void, 9 suns shone with boundless divine light. As Wang Yi waved his fists, the suns changed their forms. In an instant, the 9 suns seemed to have been connected by an inexplicable force. Then, they turned into a bow in the void. The space trembled again, and the incomparably domineering power of Supreme Yang crazily surged out of Wang Yi's body. Then, the power turned into a bowstring in the void and perfectly matched the bow prototype that had been formed by the suns. Meanwhile, 3 flying daggers flew out of Wang Yi's spiritual space and floated above his head. During this period, Demon Venerable Tiandu could feel impending doom. He naturally did not allow Wang Yi to do as he pleased and attacked several times in a row, wanting to interrupt him. However, his powerful attacks that could destroy the world were all blocked by the Vajra Buddha. Wang Yi stood where he was and did not retreat at all. Wang Yi reached out and plucked the bow from the void. Then, he casually took a purple flying dagger from above his head. He looked at Demon Venerable Tiandu and said with a smile, "Please take a look at the first arrow, Element Destruction." After saying that, the purple flying dagger turned into a sharp arrow and was placed on the bowstring by Wang Yi. The longbow was fully drawn, and phantoms of dragons and elephants appeared around it. Then, the arrow was pointed at the huge beast's body. Sensing the violent power contained in the arrow, Demon Venerable Tiandu's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. He was strong, very strong. He was terrifyingly strong. It made him feel suffocated. The power of the arrow in front of him could definitely seriously injure or even kill him. How was this possible? After paying the price, which was Wind-Chasing King's life, and fusing the Wind-Chasing King's body with his spiritual power, this body had completely stepped into the Conate realm. Although it could not survive in the world for long, it would definitely possess the complete combat power of a Conate expert while it was still alive. Meanwhile, that ant-like human was still in the 9-ranked system and had yet to take that step. The essence of his life hadn't changed just yet. So what if his combat strength was heaven-defying? There was still a huge gap between him and a true Conate realm expert. What right did this human have to go against him, who was in the Conate realm, with a mere mortal body? Although this was ridiculous, the truth was right in front of Demon Venerable Tiandu. If he did not think of a way to deal with Wang Yi, he might very well become the first Conate expert in the Endless Territories to be successfully defeated by a non-Conate realm martial artist. This was only one of his clones. Even if this clone wasn't killed, it would still dissipate on its own. However, if his enemy's counterattack really was successful, the significance would be different. At that time, Demon Venerable Tiandu would become the laughingstock of the Conate realm. Thinking of this, Demon Venerable Tiandu flew into the sky with a gloomy expression. This human was strong. However, he had yet to take that step. Thus, he had a fatal weakness, which was that he could not fly. As long as he flew into the air, so what if this human's combat strength was unparalleled? If he couldn't reach Demon Venerable Tiandu, his strength would naturally be useless. As Wang Yi watched the other party gradually disappear into the clouds, a look of disdain flashed across his lips. He muttered in a low voice, "If my spirit hadn't locked onto you, you might still have a chance to escape. But now, it's too late." As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Yi suddenly let go. The sharp arrow tore through the void with endless divine might. Under the horrified gaze of Demon Venerable Tiandu, the sharp arrow ignited with purple flames and pierced through the huge beast's body. Roar! A shrill roar of pain filled the battlefield. After the sharp arrow entered Demon Venerable Tiandu's body, the terrifying purple flames directly ignited his vast innate demon essence. Almost immediately, all traces of demonic essence disappeared from the huge beast body. Demon Venerable Tiandu felt intense pain all over his body which constantly stimulated his nerves. He could no longer continue to fly and directly smashed into the wilderness. Wang Yi's expression did not change when he saw this. He was neither happy nor sad. He reached out and took another red flying dagger from above his head. It turned into an arrow and was placed on the bowstring again. Then, Wang Yi's calm voice sounded. Please have a taste of it. The second arrow, body slaying. The moment he finished speaking, the red arrow tore through space again and shot towards the huge figure that was smashing toward the ground. As soon as the two came into contact, crimson flames instantly ignited on the surface of the sharp arrow. It was as if it was a red lotus fire that could burn all sins in the world. The huge beast's body was burned to ashes in just a breath. At this moment, only the spiritual body of Demon Venerable Tiandu was left in the air. His eyes were filled with confusion and he looked a little silly. He had been defeated. The invincible Demon Venerable had paid a huge price. After his clone completely entered the Conate realm, he had actually lost to a rank 9 creature. He had really become the first venerable level being in the Endless Territories to be successfully defeated. He looked at the other party as he felt the familiar and special charm of his spiritual body. Wang Yi finally knew how Demon Venerable Tiandu had instantly pushed a rank 9 Beast King into the Conate realm. It used its Conate spiritual power to imitate a Conate Fala. After shattering the wind-chasing king's spiritual will and occupying his body, it was equivalent to plucking the Conate Fala. Updates by. Although Wang Yi did not exactly know how Demon Venerable Tiandu had done it, he could not help but want to give this method a thumbs up. Unfortunately, this was useless. Everything was about to end. Wang Yi casually took out the last golden flying dagger from above his head and placed it on the bowstring as an arrow. Please evaluate the third arrow, God Slaying. The moment he finished speaking, the golden arrow instantly disappeared as if it had entered another space. It ignored the restrictions of space and distance. Then, it directly appeared beside Demon Venerable Tiandu's spiritual body. As soon as they made contact, the golden arrow transformed into an endless golden true fire that enveloped Demon Venerable Tiandu's spiritual body. In just an instant, the spiritual body that had combat power comparable to a Conate realm expert was burned to ashes. This time, the siege of the beasts ended with the death of nearly 100 million dire beasts and the death of a Demon Venerable clone who had stepped into the Conate realm. To be honest, with Wang Yi's 4 supreme cultivation techniques at level 12, if he did not use some methods, he could only guarantee that he would not be defeated. At most, he would only be able to suppress his opponent. However, under the superimposition of his cultivation techniques, he erupted with terrifying lethality. He used the 9 Suns' true intent as a bow and used the supreme Yang True Chi as the bowstring. Meanwhile, he used the 3 colored flying daggers as arrows and used the strength of the Dragon Elephant Wisdom technique to shoot the arrows. The first arrow extinguished Demon Venerable Tiandu's demonic essence. The second arrow killed his physical body. The third arrow punished his spirit. The divine might contained in those arrows could actually kill a Conate Demon Venerable. Just as Demon Venerable Tiandu's spiritual body dissipated, the void channel appeared again. One could vaguely see the valley and the terrifying figure in the valley again. In the next moment, the void channel suddenly trembled violently and instantly became extremely illusory, as if it was about to collapse. When Wang Yi saw this, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. As the saying went, it was impolite not to reciprocate. He was not an honest person who would not retaliate when he was beaten. First, the beasts surrounded the city, and then the Demon Venerable's incarnation descended. Everything was done by the beast race. Now that the opportunity was right in front of him, with Wang Yi's personality, he would definitely give the other party a ruthless beating. Wang Yi's movements were far faster than the commands from his brain. Just as the void channel appeared, Wang Yi's spiritual power locked onto a mighty existence along the channel. Then, 3 flying daggers appeared above his head again. The Vajra Buddha and the 12 manifestations of the Dragon Elephant Wisdom technique directly fused into the red flying dagger. Meanwhile, the 9 suns also appeared in the void and fused with the purple flying dagger along with the extremely powerful 9 suns true chi. Immediately, the red and purple flying daggers, which were several times stronger, fused into the golden flying dagger. In an instant, a three-colored heavenly saber covered in endless divine might condensed in the void. Just a wisp of saber chi appeared, but it seemed to be able to crush the void. Then, the entire space was enveloped by a domineering three-colored saber light. Slash! Wang Yi held the three-colored heavenly saber in his hand and his aura instantly increased by several times. With a furious roar, he slashed at the void channel. This was his all-out attack after coming to this world, obtaining the system, and possessing invincible strength. It could be said that Wang Yi had fused all his strength and power into this strike. This also represented Wang Yi's peak combat strength. The space seemed to have been folded. The three-colored saber beam slashed into the void passageway with peerless might. The saber beam directly crossed the endless territories and appeared in the valley far away from the Langya domain in the next second. Then, the saber beam scattered the lightning in the sky and directly struck a figure with a terrifying aura. The void channel seemed to be unable to withstand such a mighty force. The moment the three-colored saber beam slashed over, the void channel directly collapsed and disappeared into the void. However, an instant before the void channel disappeared, Wang Yi could vaguely see a majestic being. As the three-colored saber beam slashed across, several ferocious wounds suddenly appeared on the huge body of the majestic being. Blood that contained endless divine power dripped down and directly crushed the ground. In the valley filled with lightning and thunder, before Demon Venerable Tiandu could recover from the attack that his clone had suffered from, he saw a saber beam slash down from the void channel. He immediately felt intense pain all over his body, and his aura instantly became much weaker. He had never imagined that someone could actually slash a terrifying saber beam through the void channel. However, there was no time for him to think or be angry. His aura was still falling rapidly as if it would drop to the previous realm in the next second. Demon Venerable Tiandu hurriedly took out a wooden box. Inside the box was a tree-shaped plant that was glowing with green light. A trace of heartache flashed across its tyrannical eyes, but it was instantly concealed. Without any hesitation, he simply placed the plant in his mouth. Just as he swallowed the plant, the rapidly falling aura instantly stopped. Then, it rose even faster than before. In the period of one breath, Demon Venerable Tiandu's aura recovered to its peak and even improved a little. At this moment, Demon Venerable Tiandu's face was filled with rage and killing intent. A sound wave shook the void as a cold voice directly sounded in Kang City, echoing throughout the entire battlefield. Jinlin Guoshi, how dare you humiliate me like this? When my true body descends, I will definitely kill you. I will destroy 100 giant human cities and use the blood of billions of humans to wash away my humiliation. When Wang Yi heard this, he did not hold back at all and retorted domineeringly, if you dare to come in person in the future, I'll kill you again. The Connate Venerable of Langya County City did not expect Wang Yi's combat strength to be so heaven-defying. First, he killed the Demon Venerable's clone with 3 arrows, and then severely injured the Demon Venerable Tiandu's main body with a single slash. She also did not expect Wang Yi's words to be so domineering and arrogant. Wang Yi actually threatened to slaughter the Demon Venerable's main body. Her mental state actually fluctuated slightly, and the invincible sword intent that broke through the sky also flickered several times. After a long time, the Connate Venerable seemed to have calmed down. Her ethereal voice echoed above Kang City again. Fellow Taoist, if you have time, you can come to Langya County City to visit. I will naturally welcome you. The moment she finished speaking, the towering sword intent also disappeared as if it had never appeared. Those who understood what these words meant were all shocked at this moment. The title of Fellow Taoist was not something that could be used casually. After a martial artist broke through the essence of life and entered the Connate realm, their lifespan would directly increase to 1,000 years. In these long years, whether it was their parents, wives, children, or close friends, as long as they could not take that step, they would turn into dust in at most 100 years. Meanwhile, the title of Fellow Taoist was used to refer to a friend in the martial path. Only the strongest beings in that domain who could explore and fight together on the vast path of martial arts could be called Fellow Taoists. Although Wang Yi had never taken that step, he definitely deserved to be called a Fellow Taoist. No one thought that he could not advance to that realm. Everyone knew the reason that he was still stuck in the 9-rank system. He was only tempering himself and accumulating stronger strength and foundation in hopes of picking the strongest Connate Fala. When he broke through to the Connate realm, he would be an invincible existence in that domain. Wang Yi did not expect the other party to be so polite. He did not care if the other party could hear him. He cupped his fists and imitated Demon Venerable Tiandu's previous greeting. Updates by. Thank you for your kind invitation, Venerable Ning Jing. If I have time in the future, I will definitely visit you personally. Everyone's eyes were focused on Wang Yi. What no one noticed was that when Wang Yi killed the Demon Venerable's clone and slashed out with his saber, a group of people had already quietly arrived outside the battlefield. A silver sword with a terrifying aura floated above their heads, emitting sharp sword lights that enveloped everyone in the group. Wang Yi turned to look at the boundary of the battlefield. At this moment, he had already discovered this group of uninvited guests, or rather, he had already discovered the silver sword above their heads. When Wang Yi's casual glance swept past them, they felt the air around them freeze. They immediately felt their bodies stiffen on the spot as if they were under the pressure of the mountains and seas. Even the leading Grand Master in golden armor could not withstand such terrifying pressure. He felt that breathing was difficult and had the urge to kneel down. In just a few breaths, the group of people knelt on one knee at the same time. The leader lowered his head and shouted respectfully, "Greetings, Lord Venerable." The moment he finished speaking, the others also said at the same time, "Greetings, Lord Venerable." Their voices woke everyone up like the morning bell. Regardless of whether they were lightly injured or seriously injured, the city guards on the city wall struggled to get up and kneel on one knee. Their faces were filled with fanaticism and worship. Even Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu, who had just returned, and Fang Mings, who had searched the entire city but came back empty-handed, knelt on one knee at the same time and shouted, "Greetings, Lord Venerable." Their voices reverberated throughout Kang City. It was as if they were announcing their victory, as well as the excitement and ecstasy in their hearts, to the world. They had really won. Before the battle began, everyone knew very well that they would definitely die facing several rank 8 Beast Kings. Although they knew that they were no match for these Beast Kings, they were still prepared to fight to the death. However, no one had expected that an invincible human expert would suddenly descend at this critical moment. With a single roar from this human expert, nearly 100 million beasts were killed. Then, he slaughtered more than 10 rank 8 Beast Kings with a wave of his hand. Even the 2 top-notch Beast Kings did not escape and died here. The ferocious beast army that came aggressively with the intention of slaughtering the entire Kang City actually ended up being completely wiped out. On the other hand, the humans, who were supposed to be doomed, had miraculously survived, except for some soldiers who were killed by the shock and some people who were injured. When faced with this drastic change between life and death, they could not help but be excited and ecstatic. When Wang Yi saw everyone kneeling down to him, he could not help but frown slightly. To be honest, he did not like this feeling. However, Wang Yi's current state was very special. After slashing out his peak strike, he seemed to have vaguely controlled this world. His spiritual power vibrated slightly, and the power of the world instantly boiled, instantly turning into an invisible giant hand that supported the city guards on the city wall. If this was in the past, when he wasn't at his peak and wasn't in that special state, Wang Yi might not have been able to do this over such a long distance and with so many people. Then, he looked at the uninvited guests at the edge of the battlefield again. In a flash, he appeared in front of them and said indifferently, "I'm not at the Conate realm, so I can't be called a venerable." From the conversation between Venerable Ning Jing and Demon Venerable Tiandu, Wang Yi could also determine that a venerable should be the honorific title of a Conate realm expert. Hearing this, the leader said respectfully again, "Lord Venerable, you're too modest. You killed the Demon Venerable's clone with 3 arrows and protected the safety of millions of living beings in Kang City. In terms of combat strength and achievements, you are worthy of the title of a venerable." Wang Yi couldn't help but shake his head. He didn't fuss too much about how they addressed him, nor was he as polite to them as he was to the city guards. Instead, he said calmly, "When did you come to Kang City?" Upon hearing Wang Yi's question, the leader's expression turned serious. Then, he said seriously, "Supremacy Ning Jing sensed that top-notch Beast Kings were participating in the siege. She knows that a rank 8 battle supervisor would not be sufficient to deal with this matter. Thus, she especially sent us with the innate divine weapon, the Silver Frost Battle Sword, to help Kang City survive this crisis." At this moment, the silver sword above their heads suddenly vibrated as if it was signaling and saluting Wang Yi. Wang Yi could sense how powerful and terrifying the silver sword was. Then, he nodded slightly at the silver sword in response. The silver sword seemed to have a mind of its own. After receiving Wang Yi's response, It trembled in midair a few times before retracting its sword light and returning to the box on the golden armored man's back. The leader's words reminded Wang Yi of Zhao Tianlin from before. A murderous glint flashed across his eyes as he snorted coldly. A battle supervisor. In the next moment, the killing intent disappeared. Wang Yi knew that this group of people was only here under orders to help defend Kang City. He was also unwilling to vent his anger, which had been sparked by Zhao Tianlin, on these people. Thus, he said, "Get up." When the group of people heard this, they stood up from the ground as if they had been pardoned. Then, Wang Yi ignored the rest. His figure dazzled and appeared on the city wall again. Wang Yi's gaze swept across the city guards who were lying on the ground without any signs of life. His calm state of mind was shaken again. Boundless killing intent and guilt flashed across his eyes. These people were originally fresh lives with their own lives and families. Now, because of him, they had become cold corpses and had left this world forever. On the city wall, when the city guards realized that Wang Yi had suddenly appeared, they could not help but burst into fierce cheers. Victory! 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 The Venerable is invincible. The Venerable has suppressed all enemies in the wilderness. Ellipsis. Wang Yi stood on the city wall and listened to the cheers. He saw the excitement and fanaticism on their faces. He also saw the smiles on the faces of the injured sergeants. He had always wanted to do something for them. His spiritual power controlled the power of the world again, sweeping through the spirit chi in a radius of hundreds of kilometers. In an instant, a spiritual chi storm that enveloped the entire city wall was formed. At this moment, the spiritual chi on the city wall was so dense that it was almost impossible to dissipate it. It was as if the city wall was covered by a layer of fog and the situation inside could not be seen clearly. Even in the thick fog, countless drops of spiritual chi liquid condensed. The density of the spiritual chi contained in this liquid was terrifying. Wang Yi controlled the endless spiritual chi that gathered. Then, the spiritual chi surged into the bodies of everyone on the city wall. Crack, crack, crack. Almost instantly, the sound of things shattering came from the bodies of countless city guards, as if some kind of bottleneck had been broken. Someone clenched his fists and punched at the void, producing a terrifying sonic boom. He shouted excitedly, I've broken through to the advanced stage of Rank 2. There were also people whose aura surged and emitted a powerful aura. They shouted in surprise, haha, I broke through too, I advanced to rank 3. Meanwhile, someone stood rooted to the ground and rubbed his wound that had completely disappeared. He said in disbelief, my injury has actually healed. Updates by. At this moment, the city wall had already become chaotic. Everyone went through unbelievable changes. In just a few breaths, the dense spirit chi was directly fused into everyone's bodies by Wang Yi. Furthermore, in these few breaths of time, a miracle happened. The serious injuries that the martial artists had suffered became light injuries. Some of the injuries they suffered were even directly healed. Meanwhile, all the lightly injured martial artists recovered from their injuries, and some of them even experienced an improvement in their cultivation levels. As for the martial artists who were not injured, their cultivation levels had all increased. At the very least, they had broken through by a minor level. Some even directly broke through to the next realm. Among them, several lucky ones who were at the peak of rank 3 directly crossed the chasm between the battle soldier rank and the battle warrior rank. As a result, they became battle warrior rank martial artists. Fang Ming's also took this opportunity to break through to the middle of Rank 4. Meanwhile, the dragon elephant wisdom technique improved greatly. Even Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu, who were Grandmaster realm experts, benefited greatly. After all, there were still traces of the power of the world in the boundless spirit chi from Wang Yi. The moment the spirit chi disappeared, Wang Yi also retreated from that special state. Although his spiritual power could still barely control the power of the world, he no longer had the absolute control like he had earlier. At this moment, the few rank 9 Grandmasters from Langya County City in the distance were already dumbfounded. Although they were in high positions, they had never seen such a shocking scene where tens of thousands of people were breaking through at the same time. However, the people on the city wall were even more dumbfounded than them. What had just happened was like a dream. No one could imagine that such a breakthrough could happen. All the martial artists who had broken through did not feel that they had encountered any bottlenecks. They simply crossed over to the next realm. Without needing Fang Yuan and the others to take the lead, everyone consciously knelt on one knee again and shouted in unison, "We thank you, Lord Venerable." Wang Yi could not help but support his forehead with his hand. Why did they kneel down again? After exiting that special state, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill them with a roar. However, it would be difficult for him to lift them up like before. To be honest, Wang Yi did not feel uncomfortable at all when the rank 9 grandmasters from Langya County City knelt down to him. However, the group of people who were implicated in this battle because of him was also kneeling there, making him feel awkward. He could only speak again, his voice spreading throughout the city wall. Get up. At this moment, everyone's expressions were fanatical as they shouted in unison again, yes. Then, the city wall fell into a strange silence. The atmosphere was a little awkward. At this moment, Fang Yuan suddenly stood up and looked around at everyone before ordering, eliminate the red alert. Everyone, clean up the bodies of your brothers. At this point, Fang Yuan's voice trembled a little, but he quickly covered it up. He continued, return to the city immediately and form groups of 20 people to maintain order in the city. Settle the injured citizens properly and calculate the casualties in the city. The moment he issued this order, the city guards displayed the discipline that belonged solely to an army of martial artists. Almost instantly, they split into countless 20-person teams and headed into the city. The corpses of the soldiers who died in battle were also collected. Before long, only Wang Yi and the others were left on the empty city wall. At this moment, Fang Yuan suddenly bowed deeply to Wang Yi and said solemnly, on behalf of the millions of people in Kang City, I thank Venerable Wang for saving my life. Upon hearing this, Wang Yi's expression was a little unnatural. He let out a long sigh and said, this matter started because of me. Naturally, I should be the one to resolve it. There's no need to thank me. Before Fang Yuan could speak, Fang Ming simply said, I'm sorry if I offend you, but I can't agree with your words, sir. It's a fact that sir took action. It's also a fact that the tens of millions of people in Kang City survived because of sir. Sir, you said that this matter started because of you, but there's no need to take this to heart as a result. The human race and the beast race are mortal enemies to begin with. However, sir killed the beasts today. This is already a great victory for the Langya domain that has never happened in nearly 100 years. For the Kang City to be able to play such an important role in this great victory, I think those soldiers who died will also feel honored. They won't regret dying in battle because of this. Fang Yuan's eyes flashed with relief when he heard his son's words. He could not help but nod secretly. Tang Zhenyu, who was beside them, also agreed. Wang Yi knew that Fang Ming's was telling the truth, but he still couldn't get over it. However, he was not prepared to continue pestering him about this matter, so he said directly, you don't have to accompany me here. There are many things happening in the city right now. Everyone needs you to take charge and settle those who are affected. With that, Wang Yi turned around and prepared to leave. Fang Yuan looked troubled when he saw this. He braced himself and stopped Wang Yi. Sir Wang, wait. When Wang Yi heard this, he stopped in his tracks and asked curiously, what else is there? Seeing Wang Yi stop, Fang Yuan was straightforward. He pointed at the countless beast corpses outside the city and said, Sir, how should we deal with these? To be honest, Fang Yuan could not be blamed for being in such a difficult position. Logically speaking, these were all Wang Yi's spoils of war. However, Wang Yi turned around and left without saying anything. This made things a little difficult. Who would dare to touch the spoils of war of a venerable without his permission? However, they couldn't just leave these corpses outside the city. If any accidents happened, who could bear the responsibility? Wang Yi was slightly stunned when he heard this. After pondering for a moment, he said, put those things away. Use them to rebuild the city, as well as to compensate the soldiers who died in battle and those who were injured. The moment he finished speaking, Wang Yi did not give the others a chance to react and disappeared from the city wall. Fang Yuan and the others indeed did not react. Wang Yi had spoken so casually, but to them, it was no less than a bolt from the blue. It had to be known that beasts underwent continuous cultivation and were nourished by spirit qi all year round. Thus, the spirit qi contained in their flesh was extremely dense. If humans ate their meat for a long time, it would have a very strong effect on their martial arts cultivation. Furthermore, the flesh and blood of many beasts were the main materials for refining cultivation pills. It could be said that the flesh and blood of these beasts were extremely precious martial arts cultivation resources. Therefore, it also gave rise to the special duty of hunting beasts. In order to obtain huge wealth and cultivation resources, some martial artists would take the risk to leave the city and wander around the wilderness. Since the low-leveled beasts had turned into bloody mists thanks to Wang Yi's roar, none of the corpses from the beasts that Wang Yi had given to Kang City were below rank 4. Most importantly, there were more than 10 rank 8 Beast King corpses and a complete corpse of a top-notch Beast King. These were the precious resources that really made people envious. Fang Yuan and the others did not say anything. They only bowed deeply toward the place where Wang Yi had stood just now. Then, Fang Yuan said to Tang Zhenyu with a solemn expression, "Brother Tang, this matter is very important. You need to personally handle it. The distribution of all the compensation resources bestowed by Sir Wang must be implemented properly. Anyone who dares to interfere and obtain resources for personal interests will be killed without mercy." In the end, Fang Yuan's voice sounded cold. Tang Zhenyu's expression turned stern when he heard this. He said solemnly, "I will personally supervise this matter. There will definitely not be any mistakes." He naturally knew the seriousness of the matter. If the compensation given by a venerable to the casualties was embezzled by others, it was very likely to trigger the anger of an invincible venerable after the matter was exposed. After Wang Yi disappeared, the Grand Masters at the edge of the battlefield outside the city finally dared to take action. In a few flashes, they had already appeared on the city wall. When Fang Yuan saw them, he recognized them at a glance. He hurriedly bowed and said, "The guardian of Kang City, Fang Yuan, greets everyone." Upon seeing this, Fang Ming's and Tang Zhenyu also bowed. With Wang Yi's status and strength, it was fine for him to ignore these people, but Fang Yuan and the others could not. These people were really too noble. Putting aside the fact that all of them were at the Grand Master realm, just their identities alone were impressive. They were the true higher-ups and the true big shots of Langya County City. As the guardian of Kang City, Fang Yuan's words and actions affected the lives of millions of living beings in Kang City. In that case, the words and actions of these people affected countless lives in hundreds of giant cities under the rule of Langya County City. The comparison between the two was obvious. However, after these people arrived at the city wall, they did not have the dignity of higher-ups at all. Upon seeing Fang Yuan and the others bow, they very politely helped them up. Don't be ridiculous. They were not stupid. They had seen Wang Yi's attitude toward them clearly just now. Thus, they would not believe that Fang Yuan and the others had nothing to do with that venerable. Moreover, with their strength, they clearly heard the conversation on the city wall. That venerable had actually given all the spoils of war to Kang City as compensation. Those Beast Kings and even those rank 8 Beast Kings seemed to be nothing in the venerable's eyes. However, this top-notch beast corpse was different. This was a truly peerless treasure. That was very tempting even to a Grand Master realm being. Even the bewitching leader dressed in golden armor covered it. It could be said that this top-notch beast corpse was countless times more precious than the entire Kang City. For such a precious treasure to be casually given to them by the venerable, it was obvious how much he valued them in this giant city. Fang Yuan and the others knew very well that it was definitely because of Wang Yi that this group of people was so polite to them with their status. They still had this bit of self-awareness. Fang Yuan cupped his fists again and said with a smile, "Sirs, it's been a long journey. Why don't you follow me back to the Guardian's residence to rest?" The leading Supreme Grand Master did not refuse. He nodded and smiled. "In that case, I'll disturb Guardian Fang. May I know where the battle supervisor sent by Langya County City, Zhao Tianlin, is?" When Fang Yuan heard this, his expression became extremely strange. The other party was also a smart person. Seeing this, his heart couldn't help but skip a beat. As the battle supervisor, Zhao Tianlin should have been on the front line with Kang City when the beasts surrounded the city. However, he was currently nowhere to be seen on this wall. Something had obviously happened. That day, when Zhao Tianlin requested to supervise the battle in Kang City, the leader knew that Zhao Tianlin must have some private matters. However, because Zhao Tianlin had already stepped into rank 8, the leader gave him some special privileges and also gave him a warning. However, the leader did not expect that something would still go wrong. If it were any other time, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, there was a venerable hidden in Kang City. If Zhao Tianlin provoked this venerable, things would really get out of hand. Fang Yuan did not hide anything, nor was there a need to hide anything. He directly told the leader what had happened at the Su family's villa. Since Wang Yi was already a venerable, killing Zhao Tianlin was not a big problem. However, Fang Yuan emphasized that Zhao Tianlin had a personal grudge against that venerable's family. In the end, this matter even involved the Three Absolutes auction house. The few Grand Masters from Langya County City were not fools. They almost instantly understood what Fang Yuan meant. This is from the SoundStories audiobook YouTube channel. Moreover, Fang Yuan's meaning was obvious. As long as they did not have anything to do with Zhao Tianlin or the Three Absolutes auction house, this matter would not affect them. The few of them looked at Fang Yuan with gratitude in their eyes. If the other party hadn't said anything, there was a possibility that they could offend that venerable because of this matter. Thinking of this, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. How dangerous. As Grand Masters, they also cupped their fists at Fang Yuan and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Guardian Fang." Upon hearing this, Fang Yuan knew that the other party had already accepted his words. Then, he smiled and said, "You're too polite. Why don't you return to the Guardian's residence with me first?" The few of them had no objections at this moment, so they followed Fang Yuan into the city. After Wang Yi left the city wall, along the way, he discovered that the damage in the city was very serious, especially the buildings close to the city wall. They were the most affected by the aftershocks of the battle and had already turned into ruins. There were basically no intact buildings left. There were also more and more figures on the street. The crowd that had taken refuge in the underground shelters came out. Everyone was more or less injured, but their eyes were filled with joy. The red alert had been turned off. This meant that the crisis of the city being destroyed was over. How could this not make people excited and ecstatic? Countless city guards maintained order on the streets. Although there were many people around, nothing happened. When Wang Yi returned home, he found Su Xia pacing back and forth in the bedroom. Her face was filled with nervousness and uneasiness. Meanwhile, the silver-winged cloud leopard sat at the door and dutifully carried out Wang Yi's orders. Creak. When the bedroom door was pushed open, Su Xia saw who it was and suddenly let out a long sigh of relief. Her tense nerves relaxed. However, when she saw Wang Yi's tattered clothes, her heart suddenly rose to her throat. In a few steps, she arrived in front of Wang Yi and kept rubbing his body. Her eyes suddenly turned red as she asked in a panicked voice, "Ah Yi, are you hurt anywhere? How's the battle outside the city?" The tremors were terrifying. Updates by Wang Yi casually tore off the torn clothes on his body and threw them aside. He could not help but feel a little embarrassed. He had been too careless. Along the way, his mind was attracted by the tragic situation in the city. Thus, he subconsciously forgot that his clothes had been damaged from the battle with Demon Venerable Tiandu. He didn't have the time to deal with it on the way, which made Su Xia worried. Wang Yi didn't waste any time. He pulled Su Xia into his arms and waited for her to calm down before saying, "Don't worry, such a small scene won't hurt me. As for the battle outside the city, with me around, what can't I settle?" When Su Xia heard that, she was relieved to see that Wang Yi did not look injured. When Wang Yi said that he had resolved the crisis outside the city, Su Xia did not doubt him at all. After all, Wang Yi was a Grand Master, powerhouse who was even more powerful than the Guardian. Seeing that Su Xia had completely calmed down, Wang Yi said again, "I'll go fetch Mom and Dad. Wait for me at home." Upon hearing this, Su Xia's face turned pale again. She had been worried about her parents when the red alert sounded. In such a crisis where the city was at risk of destruction, her two parents were ordinary people without any martial strength. When they encountered danger, they did not even have the ability to protect themselves. However, since Wang Yi was a Grand Master, expert, she naturally could not stop Wang Yi from participating in the battle. At this critical moment, she could not distract Wang Yi and could only hide her worries in her heart. Seeing that Su Xia's expression was not right, Wang Yi knew what she was worried about. He reached out and rubbed the top of her head. Then, he smiled and said, "Don't worry, Mom and Dad will be fine. I've left a will mark on all of you. Even if the beasts really attack the city, Mom and Dad will be fine." It wasn't until Wang Yi finished speaking that Su Xia's expression returned to normal. However, she still wanted to follow him. Wang Yi naturally had no reason to object. Although the city was in chaos now, there was definitely no danger with him around. Moreover, he could lock onto the location of her two parents through the will mark. It would only take a while for them to return. Seeing that Wang Yi had allowed her to follow him, Su Xia's face lit up with joy and she urged him to set off quickly. Only after leaving the villa did Su Xia realize that the crisis had a far greater impact on Kang City than she had imagined. Because the villa was protected by the silver-winged cloud leopard, the aftershock of the battle outside the city basically did not affect this place. However, it was another world outside the villa. Since Wang Yi had stepped in, the buildings and people beyond the villa were not harmed at all by the previous beast roar. However, when Wang Yi was fighting the demon Venerable Tiandu's clone, he could not hold back even if he wanted to. He could only divert his attention to take care of the huge city and lead the battlefield deep into the wilderness. Even so, the aftermath of the battle still affected Kang City greatly. As a result of the secondary damage, the buildings around the villa were more or less damaged. Wang Yi led Su Xia against the flow of people and soon arrived at the entrance of the underground shelter not far from the Su family's villa. At this moment, there were still people walking out of the entrance of the shelter. Wang Yi directly swept his spiritual power over. He realized that Su Chang'an and Li Langxin were still in the underground shelter. Meanwhile, Wang Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry at what was happening around them. At the same time, a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Then, Wang Yi smiled at Su Xia and said, "Let's go. Dad and Mom are inside. I'll bring you to see something interesting." With that, he pulled Su Xia inside. The surging crowd acted as if they couldn't see them and didn't affect them at all. In just a moment, the two of them arrived at the deepest part of the underground shelter. Countless people were gathered around three people who were standing in the middle. Among them, a middle-aged couple looked like rich people based on their clothes and aura. At this moment, a faint golden light enveloped the two of them. The dark underground shelter was illuminated, making the two of them look even more solemn and holy. Beside them, a middle-aged man in a long robe and a long jade crown on his head was shouting crazily with a fanatical expression, "Look, this is the miracle sent down by the Yang God. They are the people chosen by the Yang God Venerable. From now on, their divine light will protect them from all illnesses and calamities." With that, the man swung his dagger at the two of them. However, before the dagger could touch the two of them, a golden light flashed and the dagger stopped in front of them, unable to move forward. Meanwhile, the figure of the middle-aged man in the robe was sent flying and he slammed heavily into the wall. After receiving such a heavy blow, not only did the middle-aged man not show any pain, but he became even more fanatical and crazy. He pointed at the two of them again and shouted, "Did you see that? Did you see that? These are the people chosen by the Yang God Venerable. With the Yang God's golden light protecting their bodies, no attack can hurt them at all. As long as you believe in the Yang God sect and pray sincerely, such miracles will also descend on you." When the surrounding people saw this, their expressions revealed strong desires. Even Su Chang'an and Li Langxin's eyes were filled with shock. They were also suspicious. Could it be that they had really been chosen by the so-called Yang God Venerable? They could not be blamed for not being calm enough. After all, they were just ordinary people who had never come into contact with martial arts before. Thus, they had never seen such a scene before. When the red alert bell sounded in Kang City and the roar of the top beast king shook the entire city, they lit up the shelter with this golden light. It was indeed as the other party had said. There were indeed several times when they encountered danger along the way, but they were all blocked by the golden light. Of course, what they did not know was that when the golden light appeared, the middle-aged man in the long robe happened to be nearby and saw everything. Hence, this scene that shocked the two of them happened. Wang Yi couldn't help but cover his face as he watched from outside the crowd. This fellow was really too good at bluffing people. However, the seal that Wang Yi had left on the three members of the Su family was mainly used for defense and did not have much attack power. At most, it would only result in some backlash. Otherwise, the middle-aged man would have been reduced to ashes by the power of the seal before his attack even landed. Seeing that the couple was intimidated by him, the middle-aged man in the long robe struck while the iron was hot and continued to bluff them. "The two of you have received the favor of the gods. Hurry up and join the Yang God sect and serve the Yang God Venerable. With your status, you will definitely be able to hold the position of the four divine envoys of the sect. You will even have a chance to enter the divine kingdom of the Yang God and enjoy endless lives with the Yang God." Wang Yi really could not stand listening to the other party's nonsense anymore. Furthermore, the killing intent in his heart was also surging. The damned Yang God race was really haunting him. He had yet to find trouble with the Yang God race, but he did not expect them to trick him. "Oh, is Yang God Venerable that powerful? Let him come out. This Venerable also wants to see if he's as powerful as you say." Wang Yi suddenly mocked. At the same time, he also addressed himself as a Venerable. There was no special reason for that. He simply liked this form of address. Moreover, with Wang Yi's invincible combat strength, he was qualified to be called a venerable. He wanted to see how terrifying this so-called young god venerable was. Only those who had just entered the Conate realm could live for 1,000 years. What right did he have to boast about eternal life? He also wanted to test the combat power of this young god venerable. How could he compare to this fake venerable? Just now, he had killed the demon venerable's clone with 3 arrows and injured the demon venerable's main body with a single slash. At this moment, Wang Yi was filled with confidence. He was not afraid even if the young god venerable came. As soon as Wang Yi finished speaking, it was as if a mysterious force had suddenly descended. The surrounding crowd could not help but retreat to the sides, opening up a path. Perhaps it was the effect of that mysterious power, but so many people collectively retreated without a stampede happening. Wang Yi held Su Xia's hand and simply walked towards the middle. Su Changgelin and Li Langxin couldn't help but look happy when they saw who it was. They ignored the middle-aged man in the long robe in front of them and went up to them in a few steps. They said in surprise, "How did you find us here?" Seeing that her parents were indeed fine, Su Xia also looked happy. She held their hands and said, "Yi said that the crisis outside the city has been resolved by him. We're here to bring you home." At this moment, the middle-aged man in the long robe who had been standing at the side saw that the 2 people, who were about to be successfully fooled by him, were about to be taken away by the 2 young people who had just arrived. His expression could not help but turn ferocious. Suddenly, he pointed at Wang Yi and Su Xia and shouted angrily, "How dare you? Lowly heretics, how dare you provoke the young god venerable? What right do you have to see him? You might not even be able to stand the divine light that the venerable has sent down, let alone the venerable's true body." The middle-aged man pointed at the golden light on Su Changgelin and Li Langxin's bodies as he spoke provocatively and disdainfully. Wang Yi almost laughed in anger at the other party's words. If not for the fact that the seals on their bodies were left by him, he might have really been fooled by this middle-aged man. This man was really too engrossed in his role. If this had happened in Wang Yi's previous life, with the middle-aged man's acting skills, he would definitely get a lot of money. However, Wang Yi also thought of teasing him. He chuckled and said, "Are you talking about this golden light?" When the middle-aged man heard this, he straightened his back and raised his chin to look at the roof. His voice came from his nostrils. Of course. Wang Yi wanted to laugh when he heard the other party's words. Was he going to kill him on the spot again? Wang Yi did not say anything. Under the incredulous gazes of all the onlookers, as well as Su Changgelin and Li Langxin, he casually waved his hand. Then, the golden light that illuminated the entire space disappeared into thin air. With the disappearance of the golden light, Su Changgelin and Li Langxin's faces became a little unnatural. They felt that something was missing, and they no longer felt confidently safe. Su Xia naturally knew the inside story. Seeing this, she pulled the 2 of them to the side and explained. As soon as the underground shelter went dark, the crowd erupted into chaos. The noise was so loud that it sounded like the roof was about to be ripped off. Who is this person? He's too strong. Was the protective divine light sent down by the young god venerable broken just like that? It seems that the so-called young god venerable isn't much either. A random person who came over managed to destroy this golden light. It was obvious that some of them firmly believed in the existence of the young god venerable and could not accept what was happening in front of them. They were already fanatics. On the other hand, some people's attitudes were ambiguous. They did not care that the golden light had been destroyed and were even in the mood to mock it. At this moment, the vision of the middle-aged man in the long robe who was looking up at the roof suddenly turned dark. When he heard the discussion from the crowd, his heart skipped a beat and he felt that something was wrong. He turned his head slightly stiffly. With the help of the light in the darkness, he vaguely saw that the young man who had just spoken was looking at him with his arms crossed in a teasing expression. The protective golden light on the middle-aged couple had also disappeared. The middle-aged man in the long robe subconsciously swallowed his saliva. A drop of cold sweat slid down his face, and his body involuntarily trembled. He knew that he had definitely run into a tough nut this time. He had seen with his own eyes how strong the protective golden light on the middle-aged couple's bodies was. He had also personally experienced its strength. Ordinary people would definitely not be able to break it, let alone do it so casually without making a single sound. Although the middle-aged man was extremely nervous and afraid, he did not feel any despair. The young man in front of him was terrifyingly powerful, but it was not as if he did not have any trump cards to contend with him. In the darkness, He suddenly stretched out his fingers and tapped on the jade crown on his head in a very rhythmic manner. He also muttered softly, "Lord, save me. Lord, save me." Wang Yi, who was watching from the side, had no intention of stopping him. Instead, he stared at the jade crown on the other party's head with interest, and a meaningful smile appeared on his lips. As the middle-aged man kept tapping his fingers on the jade crown, he seemed to have awakened the powerful existence sleeping inside. The jade crown instantly blossomed with a dazzling light, once again restoring light to the dark underground shelter. A nail-like object inside the crown, which resembled gold and wood, was constantly trembling. The dazzling light was coming out from this object. Suddenly, the dazzling light faded. A huge figure that was about 6 meters tall and was completely enveloped in golden light floated in the narrow space of the underground shelter. It was extremely similar to the golden light on Su Changdelin and Li Lengxin's bodies. It also looked extremely holy, as if a god had descended into the world. The middle-aged man in the long robe knelt on the ground after the figure appeared. His face was filled with fanaticism and piety as he shouted excitedly, "The omnipotent young god venerable, please accept the most devout faith and prayer of your believers." At the same time, the crowd suddenly became chaotic. Countless people knelt on the ground and shouted excitedly with fanatic expressions, just like the middle-aged man. Wang Yi frowned when he saw this. It had sounded so strange before. The middle-aged man had mentioned the young god venerable, the divine kingdom, and the promise of eternal life. He had thought that some impressive big shot would appear, but this was what came out in the end. This should be one of the 3 companions from the young god race that Heiyuan Tinkong had mentioned previously. Moreover, he was not the strongest one. His strength was only at rank 6, and he was still far from the peak. How dare this kind of person call himself a venerable? He was really shameless. After the figure from the young god race appeared, his cold gaze swept across the middle-aged man in a long robe kneeling on the ground. He said indifferently, "Why did you summon me?" When the middle-aged man heard this, he lowered his head a little and said respectfully, "Almighty young god venerable, a heretic has appeared to provoke the heavens and humiliate your might. I'm not his match. I can only call for your true body to descend and kill this heretic." As soon as he finished speaking, a sinister look flashed across the middle-aged man's face. He pointed at Wang Yi, who was still standing with his arms crossed. The rank 6 figure from the young god race also looked in the direction the other party was pointing at. At the same time, killing intent flashed across his eyes. In his eyes, Wang Yi was just an ordinary person and he did not sense any powerful fluctuations from him. With Wang Yi's current strength and realm, if he did not want others to discover his cultivation level, even a top-notch existence would not be able to discover him, let alone this ranked 6 figure from the young god race. To this member of the young god race, the best way to kill someone like Wang Yi, who did not have any martial strength to threaten them but dared to disrupt the plans of the young god sect, was to kill him and promote the young god sect. That was what the young god expert thought and did. The aura around him rose again, and the golden light also became stronger. He was like a god judging the world and was extremely pretentious. His golden pupils swept across Wang Yi, and his voice was cold and superior. "Ignorant heretic blasphemer, your actions have angered a great young god venerable. You will be punished for this." After saying that, the rank 6 young god expert casually waved his hand and sent out a golden beam of light. It was like a bolt of lightning from the heavens that flew toward Wang Yi. This attack looked powerful, but it actually didn't have much power. It was just for show to bluff the others. However, the young god expert felt that this was enough. After all, as a rank 6 expert, even a casual strike was not something an ordinary person could withstand. As the golden lightning descended, the surrounding crowd was in chaos again, especially the fanatics of the young god sect. Their expressions became extremely fanatical as they pointed at Wang Yi and cursed crazily, "Damned heretic, suffer the wrath of the young god venerable." Wang Yi did not take the ignorance of ordinary people to heart, but he was not in the mood to continue playing with this fellow from the young god race. Before the golden lightning could reach him, Wang Yi pointed out with his finger. A similar bolt of golden lightning flashed across the void and instantly turned into a golden cage, imprisoning the 6-meter-tall figure inside. This strange method was Wang Yi's adaptation of the black cage, which was formed by the heaven-imprisoning finger. After such a long period of research, although Wang Yi still could not figure out the special order of the 3 powers, this also gave him a lot of inspiration. According to the principle of the heaven-imprisoning finger, Wang Yi directly divided the cage into 3 cages. Then, He used the three types of powers to form three kinds of cages. The cages of different attributes could imprison the same type of power. For example, the golden cage that Wang Yi had just used was a cage that could specifically target spiritual power. Since this sun god was a spiritual body, it was perfect to use the spiritual cage. Actually, all of this made no difference to Wang Yi. If he were to fight against someone, with his strength, he could completely unleash the three cages at the same time and directly seal the enemy's physical body, true qi, and spiritual power. Apart from the fact that the three powers were being sealed separately, this method could be said to be no different from the original heaven imprisoning finger. When everyone saw that the young god Venerable, who had been so mighty just a moment ago, was captured so easily, be it the fanatics of the young god sect or the ordinary people who were skeptical, they could not accept it. After all, regardless of whether it was the way the young god Venerable appeared just now or the super powerful pressure he possessed, it proved that this young god Venerable was a super expert. The middle-aged man in the robe, who was hiding in the corner, took advantage of the fact that everyone's gaze was focused on Wang Yi and the golden cage in midair. He secretly took off his robe and the jade crown on his head before carefully retreating out of the crowd. It wasn't until he had pushed his way to the outermost edge of the crowd and realized that no one was chasing him that he let out a long sigh of relief. His expression was one of lingering fear. However, before he could be happy, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in his ear. "You left without saying goodbye. Where are you going?" The middle-aged man turned his head stiffly. When he saw the person who spoke, he immediately felt a layer of cold sweat on his back. Even his breathing slowed down slightly. He saw the young man walking out of the crowd with a golden cage that had shrunk countless times. The young man looked at him like a hunter sizing up his prey. Without waiting for the other party to speak, Wang Yi knocked him out with a finger. Then, his spiritual power surged out and lifted his body up. Actually, if this were any other time, it would have been fine if Wang Yi had beaten the young god martial artist to death. After all, these ordinary people would not be implicated. However, the young god race had actually created the damned young god sect. No one knew if there were any conspiracies or schemes involved. Therefore, Wang Yi decided to capture the young god martial artist and the middle-aged man in the long robe. Perhaps he could get some valuable information from them. Ignoring the strange gazes of the surrounding crowd, Wang Yi held the golden cage in his hand. A middle-aged man in a long robe floated behind him as he led the three Su family members toward the exit. After Wang Yi and the others left, the people in the underground shelter felt their bodies lighten and heaved a long sigh of relief. The atmosphere just now had been too oppressive. At this moment, many people in the crowd suddenly collapsed to the ground. The faith in their hearts had already collapsed, and their gazes began to dissipate. They muttered silently, "The god has fallen. The god has fallen." No one knew how the young god clan had managed to nurture so many fanatics in such a short period of time. The streets were still crowded with people. Countless figures walked out of the underground shelters one after another. Since the crisis had been resolved, there was no panic or chaos unlike at the beginning. After Wang Yi and the others walked out, they immediately attracted the attention of everyone on the streets. After all, it was difficult for them not to attract attention in their current state. Wang Yi waved his hand and called the nearest city guard over. He smiled and said, "Is your manager nearby?" When the city guard heard Wang Yi's extraordinary style of speech and saw the faint pressure around Wang Yi, he knew that the person in front of him was definitely a super expert. As for the middle-aged man floating behind Wang Yi, the city guard pretended not to see him and did not dare to pay too much attention to him. Then, he bowed slightly and said respectfully, "Greetings, Lord. Commander Wang is carrying out official business nearby. Do you want to see Commander Wang?" Wang Yi nodded when he heard this. He smiled again and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you to make a trip. Call Commander Wang and tell him to see me." The city guard responded and cupped his fists before running into the distance. After a while, a man in armor who looked like a general rushed over. That general should have been near Wang Yi when he was on the city wall. He recognized Wang Yi the moment he saw him. A fanatical expression immediately appeared on his face. He knelt on one knee and shouted extremely respectfully, "Wang Ning greets Lord Venerable." As soon as he finished speaking, it was as if an endless storm had set off in the street. To ordinary people, it was nothing, but to the soldiers among the city guards, it was like a huge bell ringing in their hearts. In every corner of the city, when the city guards who were maintaining order heard the word, "Venerable," they all ran in the direction of the voice. Crash, not far from Wang Yi, hundreds of city guards gathered and knelt on one knee in unison. They also looked fanatical and respectful as they shouted, "Greetings, Lord Venerable." When Wang Yi saw this, he could not help but feel a little helpless. If it was an enemy, he would not feel anything if he suppressed them and made them kneel. However, when faced with the kneeling of these city guards and ordinary people, although he had the right to receive such treatment, he still felt uncomfortable. The powerful Nine Suns true chi surged out from his palm and enveloped the people kneeling on one knee. Under Wang Yi's control, the violent power in the true chi was restrained as it gently lifted everyone up. Then, Wang Yi looked around at everyone. He did not have the dignity and arrogance of a supreme powerhouse. He chuckled and said, "You all have official business to attend to, so there's no need to stay here for long. Go ahead and get busy." The city guards seemed to have received an order and bowed in unison. "Yes, Venerable." Then, the crowd dispersed, once again scattering toward every corner of the street. After everyone left, Wang Yi looked at the general who called himself Wang Ning, and handed the golden cage to him. Then, he said, "Give this to Fang Mings. Tell him that the person inside will dissipate in at most 3 days. As for what to do, he will naturally understand." Then, Wang Yi waved his hand gently. The unconscious middle-aged man in the long robe behind him floated between the two of them. Wang Yi continued, "Hand this person to Fang Mings as well. Tell him that the Yang God race might be plotting something and is establishing an organization called the Yang God sect." After saying that, Wang Yi did not wait for the other party to respond and left with the 3 Su family members. Wang Ning naturally did not dare to take Wang Yi's instructions lightly. After handing over the command to the adjutant, he rushed toward the guardian's residence with the golden cage and the unconscious middle-aged man. Along the way, Su Xia and her parents did not speak. After returning to the Su family's villa, they sat on the sofa in the living room. Then, Su Changgelin asked, "Yi, what kind of crisis is it outside the city that actually triggered a red alert which represents the danger of destruction?" At this moment, Su Xia and Li Langxin looked at Wang Yi at the same time as if they were waiting for his answer. Actually, Su Xia was also very curious. After Wang Yi returned, he only told her that the beasts had surrounded the city and that the crisis had been resolved by him. As for the details, she was not sure. Seeing this, Wang Yi did not hide anything and directly told them about what happened outside the city. For a moment, there was only the sound of gasps in the living room. The 3 members of the Su family looked at Wang Yi with an inexplicable glow in their eyes. They did not understand many of the things that Wang Yi said, such as the incarnations of Venerable and Demon Venerable's wills, as well as the clone of the Demon Venerable. However, there was only one thing they understood. Wang Yi's current strength and identity were actually comparable to the invincible existence guarding the entire Langya region in Langya County City. After saying this, Wang Yi was actually muttering to himself in his heart. He was afraid that after knowing his strength, the attitude of the 3 Su family members would change. From then on, there would be unnecessary strangeness and estrangement. However, to his relief, the attitude of the 3 Su family members did not change. Su Xia hugged his arm with a face full of happiness and pride. Su Changgelin also patted him on the shoulder and laughed. "You're not bad, kid. Not bad at all. Xia is lucky to be with you. I didn't expect my son-in-law to be such a big shot." After saying that, Su Changgelin couldn't help but laugh out loud again. Upon seeing this, Wang Yi also laughed. Since the Taoist temple had also suffered considerable damage in the aftermath of the battle, they directly gave all the students leave. For the next few days, Wang Yi stayed with Su Xia at the Su residence. In the past few days, the name of Jinlin Guoshi had also spread throughout the entire Langya region. Everyone knew that a mysterious human venerable had appeared in Kang City. He had killed more than 100 million beasts and more than 10 beast kings outside the city. Among them, there were even 2 top-notch beasts. The entire Langya region was in an uproar. Countless human experts gathered in Kang City, wanting to meet this mysterious human venerable. In the Su family's villa, after Mr. Su and Mrs. Su tasted Wang Yi's cooking, they decided with Su Xia that Wang Yi would be in charge of the family meals in the future. Wang Yi smiled and agreed. No matter how heaven-defying his combat strength was or how respected his status was, it was only right for him to cook for his family. Moreover, his dishes could also be used to nourish Su Changgelin and Li Langxin's physiques. Even if they failed to practice martial arts in the future, their lifespans could still be extended by dozens of years. Actually, Wang Yi wanted to make time to make a trip to Langya County City these few days. First, he had been invited by Venerable Ning Jing. Thus, he wanted to visit the first human connate venerable he had come into contact with after coming to this world. Second, he wanted to personally visit the Three Absolutes auction house to figure out the secret behind the Su family's matter and completely deal with it. However, during this period, Wang Yi discovered that the speed at which the city was being rebuilt and restored was astonishing. It was estimated that in a few days, the entire Kang city would be rebuilt and restored to its previous prosperity and liveliness. Therefore, Wang Yi wanted to wait until everything returned to normal before going to Langya County City. After all, a few more days should not make a difference. If any beasts dared to invade the city during this period, he could also suppress them. 5 days after the beast siege, in Wang Yi's villa, Wang Yi and Su Xia stood side by side and were speechless when they saw the group of people in front of them. Why were these people gathered together? The people who came were the ranked 9 Grand Masters of Langya County City, the father and son from the Fang family, Tang Zhenyu, and, most unexpectedly, Shu Liancheng. Shu Liancheng was just the patriarch of a relatively large family in Kang City. It was unknown how a little lamb like him managed to sneak into this group of ferocious beasts. After seeing Wang Yi and Su Xia, everyone immediately cupped their fists and bowed. They said respectfully, "Greetings, Lord Venerable and Madam." Among the crowd, only Shu Liancheng felt the most complicated and excited. He originally thought that Wang Yi was only a grandmaster. Although this was already very impressive and he was a true big shot, he was worlds apart from a venerable. They were not on the same level at all. The difference in strength and status was countless times greater than the difference between ordinary people and grandmasters. With Shu Liancheng's status, although he was not qualified to come into contact with an invincible existence like a venerable, he was qualified to know. He could not imagine that the smiling young man in front of him was actually such a terrifying big shot. If he could use this opportunity to enter this person's field of vision and get close to this person, the Shu family would probably be able to obtain a great opportunity. At the thought of this, he looked at Tang Zhenyu, who was beside him with indescribable gratitude in his eyes. Meanwhile, Su Xia seemed to be a little unused to so many big shots bowing to her. Panic flashed across her face and she subconsciously wanted to hide behind Wang Yi. At this moment, Wang Yi held her hand and shook his head with a smile. What a joke! Could Wang Yi's wife not accept a bow from them? When Wang Yi grew stronger in the near future, even a venerable would have to bow obediently to Su Xia, let alone these people in front of them. Then, Wang Yi smiled at everyone and said, "Everyone, there's no need to be so polite. Please take a seat." Fortunately, Wang Yi had turned the villa into a restaurant. There was nothing else, but there were still many seats that were enough for the dozen or so people. After everyone sat down, Su Xia put a cup of brewed tea in front of each person. These tea leaves were given to Wang Yi by Tang Zhenyu previously. Seeing this, everyone stood up again and said respectfully, "Thank you, madam." This time, Su Xia seemed to have gotten used to it. Her expression did not change as she smiled and acknowledged them one by one. Then, she left, leaving the hall to Wang Yi and the others. Initially, Wang Yi wanted Su Xia to stay. To Wang Yi, there was no such thing as the belief that a woman could not get involved in a man's business. However, he thought that she might not be interested in the rest of the conversation, so he did not stop her. After Su Xia left, Wang Yi said calmly, "Why are you all here together?" The moment he finished speaking, the golden-armored leader of the group from Langya County City suddenly stood up and knelt on one knee. He said, "I'm Yang Jingyuan, the commander of the Langya County City's regional army. I'm here to apologize to you." Wang Yi frowned slightly when he heard this and said in confusion, "You're the commander from Langya County City. Even if you're guilty, you should be punished by Venerable Ning Jing. Why are you here?" Yang Jingshuan did not stand up and continued, "Lord Venerable, Zhao Tianlin was sent to Kang City as a battle supervisor because I signed the documents. Please punish me, Lord Venerable." When faced with a venerable, Yang Jingshuan did not dare to hide anything. He directly told Wang Yi everything that had happened, including Zhao Tianlin's request for him to come to Kang City to be a battle supervisor. Wang Yi did not care much after hearing that. He smiled and said, "Get up. This has nothing to do with you. I don't like to vent my anger on others. Zhao Tianlin and I have a personal grudge. Even if you didn't send him, he would still come to Kang City. It's just a matter of time." Hearing that Wang Yi had no intention of blaming him, Yang Jingxuan heaved a sigh of relief. He secretly wiped his cold sweat and bowed again. Thank you, Lord Venerable. He was really afraid that Wang Yi would vent his anger on him. If Wang Yi killed him here and the matter reached Venerable Ning Jing, she would probably only comment that her subordinate had caused trouble for Wang Yi. After all, he was indeed responsible for this matter. Wang Yi did not respond and only waved his hand to signal for them to sit down. Then, he swept his gaze across everyone and asked, "Is there anything else?" At this moment, Fang Yuan stood up again and cupped his fists. Sir Wang, we've already finished interrogating the martial artist from the Yang God race and the person who promoted the Yang God sect that you handed over to Ming Zi. The Grand Masters from Langya County City were extremely envious of how Fang Yuan addressed Wang Yi. It was very obvious that Wang Yi had tacitly agreed to this. It could be seen that their relationship was extraordinary. Wang Yi's interest was piqued. He also wanted to know what the Yang God race was up to. He couldn't help but say, "What's going on? Tell me." Fang Yuan bowed and replied again, "According to the martial artist from the Yang God race, he is one of the 4 Yang gods hidden in Kang City. Out of the other 3 beings, the one with the highest cultivation has already reached rank 9. That figure is Heiyuan Tinkong, whom you killed previously. This matches the information we already have. As for why they established and promoted the Yang God sect, this martial artist from the Yang God race was just following orders. He doesn't know much. I just know that they seem to be doing preparations for a sacrifice and to receive something, but he can't say what exactly it is. However, there's something very important in the information he gave us. The Yang God sect seems to have developed not only in Kang City but also in countless huge cities in the Langyu domain. Moreover, in some giant cities, the Yang God sect has already developed on a very large scale. As for the person who preached about the Yang God sect, he's not a gangster. He was bewitched by the Yang God race and has no idea about anything." Wang Yi couldn't help but click his tongue when he heard that. Why did it feel like the Yang God race was like a group of locusts? Their development was too fast. They had the momentum to sweep through the entire Langyu domain. The Yang God sect was definitely plotting something. Wang Yi just could not figure out what the Yang God sect's motive was, but it was definitely not something good. Wang Yi also knew that things were not simple, so he asked in a low voice, "Are you sure about this information?" Fang Yuan's expression suddenly became very serious as he said solemnly, "I've already sent someone to investigate the nearby giant city with a personal letter. The situation is very bad, even worse than what the martial artist had said. The people in Linjiang City, which is closest to Kang City, have already started worshipping the Yang God sect, including many of the upper echelons in the giant city." The Grand Masters of Langya County City were confused. They could understand every word Fang Yuan said, but they couldn't comprehend his words when they put them together. As for the Yang God race and the Yang God sect, they had never heard of them. However, when they read between the lines and analyzed Wang Yi and Fang Yuan's expressions, they could also sense that things were definitely not that simple. In the end, Yang Jingxuan could only bite the bullet and ask, "May I ask, Lord Venerable, what race is this Yang God race?" Fang Yuan first turned to look at Wang Yi. Seeing that Wang Yi did not say anything, he already understood what he meant. Actually, this was also within his expectations. The Yang God race had already spread throughout all the giant cities in the Langya region. A huge disaster could erupt at any time. Thus, Wang Yi definitely wouldn't mind sharing this matter with Langya County City. After all, it would not be a big deal if the Yang God race only appeared in Kang City. With this venerable around, he would definitely be able to suppress the Yang God race easily. However, now that the Yang God race had appeared in countless huge cities, the situation was different. Langya County City had to step into control and resolve the situation. Today, the reason why Fang Yuan was able to come with these Grand Masters from Langya County City was not only because these Grand Masters had invited him to meet Wang Yi. It was also because even if these Grand Masters had not come to Fang Yuan, he would still find an opportunity to invite them along. After all, there were too many things involved in this matter. Fang Yuan looked at Tang Zhenyu beside him. Tang Zhenyu instantly understood what he meant. He took a step forward, cupped his fists, and bowed to Wang Ning and the others. Then, he directly told them everything that happened in the villa that day. The information about the Yang God race, the spatial rift, and the visitor from the other world all challenged their nerves and worldview. The more Wang Ning and the others listened to this, the more shocked they became and the more solemn their expressions became. They knew very well that this matter was serious. In the small Kang city, there was a rank 9 Grandmaster, a rank 7 Grandmaster, and 2 battle warrior rank martial artists from the Yang God race. From this, it could be deduced that countless Yang God experts were hidden throughout the entire Langya domain. There were probably even venerables among them. This was no longer something that the few of them could handle. They had to report this to the venerable immediately. Otherwise, all the giant cities in the Langya domain might be destroyed in an instant. According to Tang Zhenyu, it was unknown how the descent of the Yang God race would affect the beast race, but the Yang God race was definitely a mortal enemy of the human race. The Yang God race and the human race shared an irreconcilable and hostile relationship. The Yang God race regarded the human race as a cultivation resource. This point alone would result in a fight to the death between the two races. It was likely that the human race would be in an even more difficult situation. At that time, there would be the internal threat of the beasts and the external danger of the Yang God race. They would face enemies from both sides. Perhaps the destruction of the human race would be imminent by then. Although Yang Jingxuan knew that it was impossible for Tang Zhenyu to lie about such a matter, he had no choice but to confirm again, "Grandmaster Tang, this matter is very important, but we can't exaggerate it at all." Before Tang Zhenyu could answer, Wang Yi continued, "I can testify to this matter." What he said was not exaggerated at all. With a venerable like Wang Yi as a guarantor, Yang Jingxuan naturally did not have any doubts. At the same time, his expression became extremely solemn. He could not help but stand up and bow to Wang Yi. He said anxiously, "Lord Venerable, please forgive us. This matter concerns the survival of the human race. We have to leave immediately and return to Langya County City and report this matter to Venerable Ning Jing." Upon hearing this, Wang Yi nodded slightly. He could understand why the other party was in such a hurry, so he said, "Go. When you return, please tell Venerable Ning Jing that I will personally visit Langya County City in the next few days." Just as he finished speaking, Yang Jingxuan and the others were overjoyed. They naturally understood what Wang Yi meant. In the face of an unknown and powerful enemy like the Yang God race, an additional venerable naturally gave them more confidence. Thinking of this, Yang Jingxuan bowed again and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Lord Venerable. When Venerable Ning Jing finds out that you are personally coming to Langya County City, she would definitely be extremely happy and would definitely welcome you." Wang Yi waved his hand and said with a smile, "All right, go ahead." Then, he reminded them worriedly, "You can't let your guard down on this matter. You have to deal with it immediately when you get back." Yang Jingxuan said solemnly, "Lord Venerable, don't worry. We will definitely deal with the matter of the Yang God race first. We'll take our leave." After saying that, Yang Jingxuan led the few grandmasters and prepared to leave. However, before he could take a step, he seemed to have remembered something. Then, he said to the female grandmaster among them, "Commander Wu Shuang, stay behind and listen to Lord Venerable's orders." The female grandmaster called Wu Shuang did not say anything when she heard this. She simply left the group and stood at the side. At this moment, Yang Jingxuan led the other grandmasters out of the villa. After the grandmasters from Langya County City left, the people from Kang City relaxed a lot and were much more casual. They were not as serious as before anymore. They felt that when the few grandmasters of Langya County City were here, they seemed to give them a lot of pressure, even more than Wang Yi. Although Wang Yi's status was much nobler than those few people, they could still be at ease in front of Wang Yi without feeling any pressure. After Yang Jingxuan and the others left, Wu Shuang still did not speak. Instead, she casually found a seat and sat down. At this moment, Tang Zhenyu continued, "Sir Wang, the value of the compensation resources you gave has been calculated. However, because the Guardian's residence is not very professional in the value and classification of materials, in order to prevent any mistakes, I made the decision to let the Shu family participate. The Shu family's business mostly concerns the beast corpses. They are definitely the most professional in Kang City." Once Tang Zhenyu finished speaking, he gestured to Shu Liancheng with his eyes. When Shu Liancheng saw this, he instantly understood what Tang Zhenyu meant. He stood up and bowed to Wang Yi. He said respectfully, "Lord Venerable, the beast materials outside the city have been sorted and stored. Among them, because the beast soldier rank beasts were shattered, we only collected the scattered flesh and bone fragments. In total, there are about 5 million complete beast corpses. Other than some blood loss, the beast warrior rank corpses are intact. There are a total of 11,300 of such corpses. Meanwhile, we didn't lose any beast kings. Among them, there are a total of 22 rank 7 Beast Kings and 13 rank 8 Beast Kings. There's also the corpse of a top-notch Beast King. As it was cut into two by you, its flesh and blood are intact, but it has lost 2/3 of its blood. When Tang Zhenyu finished speaking, Shu Liancheng took out a booklet and bowed. All the detailed data is recorded in this booklet. Lord Venerable, please take a look. After Shu Liancheng found out that Wang Yi was a venerable, he naturally did not dare to be as casual as Fang Yuan and the others, who called Wang Yi, sir. Wang Yi valued Fang Yuan and the others. Thus, it was fine for them to address him like this, but Shu Liancheng could not. He knew his limits. Previously, the Shu family was still the vanguard that suppressed the Su family. Although Wang Yi had already said that he would not fuss about it anymore, Shu Liancheng should still make his position clear. When Wang Yi heard Shu Liancheng's words, he could not help but feel a little surprised. He still remembered that those beast soldier rank beasts had been turned into a bloody mist by his roar. Thus, he did not expect the other party to still be able to collect so much material from them. With a wave of his hand, he simply took the booklet in Shu Liancheng's hand. Wang Yi opened it and realized that the contents were all handwritten. The handwriting was very neat and revealed a faint sense of vicissitudes. The person who wrote it seemed to have experienced the joys and sorrows of life. At the end of his life, he saw through everything in the world. It was very likely that the old man in front of him had written the contents himself. Wang Yi flipped through the pages. The contents were very detailed, including the approximate value of the beast corpses, how to store the shattered flesh and bones, and the address where they were stored. The booklet also contained information on the beasts that were suitable for refining cultivation pills, the beasts that were suitable for direct consumption, and the beasts whose skin and bones were suitable for making defensive equipment and weapons. It could be said that this booklet covered almost all possible loopholes. Wang Yi could not help but sigh. A professional was indeed a professional. Then, he looked at Shu Liancheng in front of him and was very satisfied. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said with a smile, "Well done. I still need you to cooperate with the Guardian's residents and carry out the distribution of the compensation. After this matter is over, I will naturally not mistreat you." Shu Liancheng's heart couldn't help but beat wildly when he heard this, and his expression couldn't help but be filled with ecstasy. He knew in his heart that the Shu family had finally caught this person's eye and that they had established a connection with him. Then, he bowed again and said respectfully, "It's the Shu family's honor to be able to work for Lord Venerable. We don't dare to ask for anything else." However, Wang Yi shook his head slightly and smiled. "Since you're working for me, you still have to take the benefits." The moment he finished speaking, Wang Yi waved his hand and the booklet flew back into Shu Liancheng's hand. Shu Liancheng had been the head of the Shu family for many years and had developed the prosperity of the Shu family. Thus, he was naturally a scheming person. Furthermore, he knew that the words of an invincible existence like Wang Yi were law and reason. Wang Yi would not allow anyone to refuse or disobey him. Shu Liancheng did not continue to decline. After thanking Wang Yi respectfully, he returned to his seat with the booklet in his hands. He looked down and stopped talking as if the rest of the matters had nothing to do with him. At this moment, Tang Zhenyu said again, "Sir Wang, the resources you've given us are too much and too precious. According to the Shu family's calculations, the value of the flesh and bones of the beast soldier rank beasts is enough to compensate the city guards and civilians who died in this battle. Based on the number of casualties and the losses in the city, we plan to split the flesh and bones of the beast soldier rank beasts into 3 parts and start using them. One part of the compensation will be exchanged for money. Based on the injuries and losses, the casualties and the widows will be given different amounts of money. This will ensure that they will have enough money for their daily expenses. When the injured among them recover, they will no longer be issued money. As for the families of the deceased, if they have children, the guardian's residents will be responsible for all their living expenses and school fees. If they have parents, the guardian's residents will take care of them until they grow old. If they have wives and husbands, the guardian's residents will also arrange jobs to ensure that they can live a normal life. Furthermore, there will be a monthly compensation until all the immediate family members of the deceased die." Although Wang Yi did not know much about this, from what Tang Zhenyu said, he had taken care of almost everything. Thus, Wang Yi smiled and said, "Don't disappoint the deceased. Especially those martial artists who sacrificed themselves to defend the city. We can't let them be hurt and sad." Fang Yuan stood up when he heard this and bowed to Wang Yi with cupped fists. he said with a very serious expression. Fang Yuan represents the deceased and thanks Sir Wang for your kindness. Sir, don't worry, the Guardian's residence will definitely personally supervise the use of this batch of resources. No matter who it is or who they are, if they dare to extend their hands to embezzle these resources, I will definitely kill them. Looking at Fang Yuan, who was standing there like he was reporting official business, Wang Yi felt strange. He felt that he was the guardian of Kang City, and Fang Yuan was just an official under him. It felt as if Wang Yi was trying to steal the limelight. What Wang Yi did not know was that the more he acted like this, the happier Fang Yuan and the others were. They wished that Wang Yi could manage more business in Kang City. What did this mean? This meant that Kang City would be tied to this person and would have a deep bond with him. Although the human race and the beast race appeared to be peaceful on the surface, there were undercurrents surging in the dark. Peace was like an illusion. It could be broken at any time and an even more cruel war could erupt. Furthermore, the threat of the Yang God race had also appeared. No one knew when the Yang God race had started to enter this world. Furthermore, no one knew how many Yang God experts were hidden in the various giant cities, let alone when they would attack the human race. However, what they knew was that as long as the Yang God race attacked, the Yang God race would definitely have absolute confidence. They were like venomous snakes that could launch a fatal attack on the human race at any time. In this era of blood and chaos, if a giant city could have a venerable presiding over it, the venerable would be the capital to survive in this chaotic world. There was no need to think about the problem of safety anymore. Wang Yi sighed and said, "There's no need to thank me. No matter what, they died because of me. These are my compensation to them." This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Yi's mood clearly became a little low. When Fang Yuan saw this, he said again, "Sir Wang, you don't have to be so concerned. If those brothers knew that you were so considerate, they would probably be smiling in the afterworld." Wang Yi nodded slightly and did not dwell on this matter. He turned to look at Tang Zhenyu and said with a smile, "In that case, what did you use the other 2 parts for?" Upon hearing this, Tang Zhenyu replied again, "As for the second part of the resources, they will be used to rebuild the buildings in the city. Due to the aftermath of the battle, the buildings in the city have been severely damaged. The closer we get to the outer city, the worse the damage is. The buildings adjacent to the city walls have already been completely reduced to ruins." Wang Yi could not help but nod as he listened. Tang Zhenyu was right. On the way back that day, he had witnessed the catastrophic impact of the battle on the city. Tang Zhenyu continued, "As for the last part, we signed a contract with a few large pill pavilions and chambers of commerce in Kang City to exchange for various cultivation pills and martial arts resources. As long as the descendants of the deceased have the aptitude for cultivation, we will provide them with all the necessary cultivation resources. There's no need for Beast Warrior rank beast materials for the time being. However, Beast Warrior rank beasts are strong and their bodies are extremely powerful. After special treatment, they can be stored for a long time and can be preserved for emergencies. As for the corpses of the Beast Kings, they are really too precious. I still can't find a place to use them. This is the detailed data recording the various uses of resources. Please take a look, Sir Wang." With that, Tang Zhenyu also took out a small booklet and handed it over with both hands. Wang Yi really wanted to ask if the 2 of them had discussed this beforehand. The booklet was exactly the same as before, making them look like primary school students handing in their homework. Wang Yi did not take the booklet from Tang Zhenyu's hand. He just smiled and said, "I won't read this. Just do your job well." Without waiting for the other party to reply, Wang Yi suddenly stood up and said, "I promised last time that I would personally cook for you when you come again. It just happens to be mealtime. You guys can eat here together." At this moment, Fang Mings, who had always been invisible and had never said a word, was pleasantly surprised when he heard that Wang Yi was going to personally cook for them. He smiled and said, "Thank you for your hard work, sir. I've been looking forward to tasting your cooking again today." With Wang Yi's current strength and status, only Fang Mings would dare to speak to him like this. Even though Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu were familiar with Wang Yi, they did not dare to be so casual. Even the female grandmaster named Wu Shuang, who was left behind by the group of grandmasters from Langya County City, looked at Fang Mings with a strange expression. She wondered what this person had to do with that venerable. It had to be known that when Fang Mings addressed Wang Yi, he simply used, "Sir," and did not call him by his name. Although it was only a difference of 2 words, the meaning behind it was very different. For example, when Fang Yuan and the others addressed this venerable, although Wu Shuang could tell that they were very familiar with this venerable, the reverence and distance in their words were very obvious. When Fang Ming's addressed this venerable, she felt that they were closer. Moreover, she felt that Fang Ming's was calling the venerable his teacher. Thinking of this, Wu Shuang was shocked by her own thoughts. If that was the case, the young man in front of her that she had always ignored was not ordinary. His status was probably not inferior to a grandmaster like her. Of course, Wang Yi did not know what she was thinking. However, even if he did, he would not care. If Fang Ming's could really cultivate the Dragon Elephant Wisdom technique to level 3 in a year, he really did not mind accepting him as his disciple. After all, Fang Ming's was the first martial artist he had met since he came to this world, and his senses weren't that bad. At that time, Fang Ming's status would be extremely noble. Wang Yi smiled and nodded at them. Without saying anything, he walked toward the kitchen. Soon, dazzling light and dense spirit qi filled the table. During this period, Wu Shuang's emotions had never calmed down. She learned from Fang Yuan and the others that this shop was actually founded and run by Wang Yi. When she followed everyone here just now, she felt that the surroundings were very similar to a small restaurant, but she did not think too much about it at that time. Now that she thought about it, she really couldn't accept it. How revered was a venerable? A venerable was an invincible expert who could suppress an entire region alone. Who would have thought that such an existence would open a small restaurant, and become a chef and a small business owner? Everyone took their seats. After all, Wu Shuang and Fang Yuan had never tasted Wang Yi's cooking before. In consideration of Wang Yi's dignity as a venerable, they did not eat before Wang Yi did. However, the others were not so polite. Their eyes were almost glued to the dishes as they moved their bowls and chopsticks, stirring the spirit qi above the table. Even Shu Liancheng, who had the lowest status in the crowd, did not hold back at this moment. He ate until the corners of his mouth and beard were stained with oil. Among them, only Su Xia's table manners were considered elegant. After all, she could eat Wang Yi's cooking every day, so she naturally did not lose her composure like the others. Cough, cough. When Wang Yi saw this scene, he coughed dryly. He picked up his chopsticks and smiled at the two who had not started eating. Try it. After saying that, he picked up the plate of the heavenly hard lotus and put it into his mouth. When Wu Shuang and Fang Yuan saw this, they also picked up the dishes in front of them and ate them. With this bite, their eyes immediately lit up. Almost instantly, they turned into a teoti and started eating until the corners of their mouths were covered in oil like the others. Fang Yuan finally knew why a steady person like Brother Tang and his clever son were so rude in front of Wang Yi. The enjoyment in his mouth, the stimulation of his taste buds, and the obvious increase in his cultivation level made him deeply intoxicated. At this moment, Wu Shuang was even more shocked. To be honest, with her status, Venerable Ning Jing had also given her many top-notch delicacies. She had even eaten many delicacies that used a rank 9 Beast King as the main ingredient. However, compared to the dishes in front of her, the previous delicacies were as delicious as wax. More importantly, after eating the few dishes on the dining table, she even felt that her cultivation level had increased slightly. She was a peak level rank 9 Grandmaster and was already at the limit of the 9 rank system. Unless she could experience a qualitative change in her strength that would allow her to reach the peak, it was impossible for her cultivation level to increase at all. That was the scariest part. She couldn't help but think that if she could eat such dishes every day, she would probably have a chance to try to break through to the highest realm of life. At the same time, she felt sorry for her companions. If only they had left a little later, they would have had a chance to taste these peerless delicacies that were comparable to the Heavenly Palace's immortal banquet. Fortunately, Wang Yi was prepared this time. He had prepared enough dishes and placed all kinds of precious materials into those dishes. Otherwise, he might not have enough food to feed the group of martial artists in front of him. Su Xia looked at the group of people wolfing down their food and couldn't help but want to laugh. She didn't expect that the usually high and mighty big shots actually had such a side. She turned to look at Wang Yi, who was sitting calmly beside her. A look of pride and happiness flashed across her eyes. This meal could be said to be a feast for the guests. They had wiped the dishes clean. Wang Yi and Su Xia seemed to be in a good mood. It was only at this moment that everyone felt a little embarrassed when they saw the mess on the dining table. As the only woman other than Su Xia, Wu Shuang lowered her head and blushed. They were full. Since he had nothing to do, Wang Yi smiled and said, "If everyone has nothing to do, why don't you discuss martial arts with me?" Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and their faces could not help but reveal ecstasy. The surprise was all too sudden. Wang Yi's words were polite, but no one present was a fool. Who wouldn't understand what he meant? A venerable was about to preach. How lucky and glorious was it to have a supreme venerable being who was willing to discuss martial arts with them. Even though Wu Shuang was a Grand Master and was extremely close to Venerable Ning Jing, she did not have many chances to listen to the Venerable's lectures. Other than Su Xia, who was sitting in her seat without moving, everyone else looked excited. They bowed to Wang Yi and said gratefully, "Thank you, Lord Venerable, for preaching to us." Wang Yi shook his head and smiled. "Everyone, you're too polite." The debut release occurred at NOV3L=BJN. Then, he swept his gaze across everyone and said slowly with a serious expression, "Everyone knows that there are 9 levels in martial arts. Martial artists at the battle soldier rank train their bodies, martial artists at the battle warrior rank refine their spirit chi, while martial artists at the battle god rank refine their spiritual power. In that case, which of the 3 powers do you think is the most important and most powerful for martial artists?" Wu Shuang took a step forward. As a rank 9 Grand Master, she had the most say in this. Without any hesitation, she answered Wang Yi's question. Spiritual power is the condensation and manifestation of a martial artist's own will. It's a supreme power that can only be derived after stepping into the Grandmaster realm. Spiritual power can suppress any martial artist below the Grandmaster realm. This also means that a Grandmaster can ignore martial artists below rank 7. Thus, spiritual power is naturally the most important and powerful. The rest of the people kept nodding. They had no objections to Wu Shuang's words. Moreover, this was also a publicly acknowledged principle in the world of martial arts. Martial artists cultivated step by step. They first refined their bodies, then refined their spirit chi, and finally refined their spiritual power. Thus, spiritual power was indeed more important and powerful than the other 2 powers. However, upon hearing this, Wang Yi shook his head and said, "Spiritual power can suppress any martial artist below rank 7 because their physical strength and true chi are not strong enough at that level." And with that, Wang Yi's body trembled slightly, and his body emitted a lustrous glow. The 9 suns true chi, which was extremely powerful, surged through his meridians at high speed. Meanwhile, the 3 colored flying daggers emitted wisps of saber chi from his spiritual sea. The terrifying power kept trembling in the void as if it was about to manifest some mighty existence. Boom! With a loud bang, 3 terrifying figures surrounded by dazzling light appeared in the air in front of them. As there was no pressure spreading out, the others did not feel anything. However, Wu Shuang looked at the 3 figures that suddenly appeared in front of her and her expression could not help but stiffen. As a rank 9 Grand Master, she could vaguely sense that these 3 venerables were on par with her realm. They were even slightly stronger than her. Wang Yi pointed at the 3 figures in the void and said with a smile, "These are incarnations condensed from my pure physical strength, true chi, and spiritual power. Every incarnation has the combat strength of a peak rank 9 martial artist." Hiss. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a series of gasps. Only then did the others understand how terrifying the 3 figures in the void were. They also finally understood why a venerable could suppress the endless Langya domain. It was too terrifying. He had casually condensed 3 peak level rank 9 incarnations. If he could maintain them for a long time, he would probably be able to dominate half of the giant cities that belong to the human race. Wang Yi pointed at one of the incarnations surrounded by red light and continued, "This is completely condensed from the power of my physical body." As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Yi pointed at an incarnation surrounded by golden light. "This is completely condensed from my spiritual power. Everyone, let's see if spiritual power can completely suppress physical strength when the 2 incarnations clash." Wang Yi's voice seemed to have an unfathomable power. As he spoke, the surrounding power of the world and spirit chi instantly gathered in the hall. Although it was slightly lacking compared to a connate expert's control over the power of the world, it was definitely much stronger than the power of the world that a top-notch Grandmaster could interfere with. It was simply impossible to calculate its strength. In the blink of an eye, the power of heaven and earth and boundless spirit chi transformed into a small space that existed alone in the void. As Wang Yi pointed his finger, the 2 figures, one red and one gold, flashed on the spot and disappeared into the small space. After doing all this, Wang Yi looked at everyone with a smile and said, "Everyone, please." The moment he finished speaking, Wang Yi pointed his finger and endless divine light instantly enveloped everyone. They did not even have the chance to react. Everyone felt their vision blur as if they had passed through layers of the void. Their consciousness left their bodies and involuntarily flew toward that small space. At this moment, space seemed to have frozen, and time seemed to have stopped. It seemed like thousands of years had passed, but it also seemed like an instant. When everyone stabilized themselves, they realized that the scene in front of them had completely changed. They were no longer in the hall of the villa that had been renovated into a restaurant. As far as the eye could see, it was an endless wilderness. Everyone was currently at the peak of a towering mountain. However, this mountain seemed to have been cut in half by a peerless divine weapon. The top of the mountain was as smooth as a mirror, it spanned a diameter of more than 10 kilometers. The two figures, one red and one gold, were facing each other at the center of the summit. "This is the heaven-breaking peak." Someone couldn't help but shout when they saw where they were. Clearly, this person had already recognized this place. This was the former territory of the Silver-Winged Beast King. It was probably tens of thousands of kilometers away from Kang City. No one could imagine that in just a flash, they had actually crossed an endless distance and appeared on Heaven-Breaking Peak. No one had noticed that there was a kitten with silver wings lying down at the foot of Heaven-Breaking Peak. Wu Shuang sized up her surroundings, feeling the breeze on her body and smelling the scent of the wilderness in the air. A hint of disbelief flashed in the depths of her eyes. The others might not have noticed it, but as a rank 9 Grand Master, she more or less sensed it when Wang Yi pointed out his finger. It was as if her will and spirit had been extracted the moment she was enveloped by the divine light. In other words, they might not have corporeal bodies at this moment. Instead, they existed in the form of mental will. As she thought about this, she seemed to remember something. Her expression suddenly changed again and again. She carefully sized up her surroundings again. The more she looked, the more shocked she became until there was only one thought in her mind. What a stroke of luck! Legend had it that Conate realm experts could control the power of the world. With the power of the world as the core, they could fill it with endless spiritual power and build a special space that could pull in one's spiritual will. When a martial artist's spiritual will was in this space, they could perform martial arts without any restrictions. They could fight wantonly and cultivate any powerful techniques in this space. This was because no matter how serious their injuries were, as long as they returned to their bodies, they would fully recover. Most importantly, when their spiritual will returned to their body, not only would their insights from battle and cultivation would completely fuse into their bodies, but they would also be able to bring back some of the power of the world and the spirit chi that constructed this space. However, these only existed in legends. Constructing such a special space would be a little strenuous for a Conate Venerable, and it would more or less exhaust them. In this chaotic era, the human race was surrounded by enemies. Venerables had to protect the fate of the human race and suppress many powerful enemies. The safety of countless living beings depended on these venerables. They had to maintain their peak state at all times to deal with any danger that might appear at any time. They could not afford any mistakes. Therefore, even with Wu Shuang's status, she had only heard of this but had never really seen such a special space. Wang Yi's figure also quietly appeared in this space. He swept his gaze across the dazed crowd and smiled softly. "Everyone, please take a look." When Tang Zhenyu finished speaking, the two figures seemed to have received an order and erupted with a shocking aura at the same time. Terrifying power continuously collided in the void as the two figures directly fought. Boom! The red figure's body was like immortal divine gold. It waved its fists and formed countless dragon and elephant phantoms. Then, it used its extremely powerful physical strength to attack the golden figure. The golden figure's body trembled slightly. Then, an extremely powerful wave of spiritual power spread out and crushed the void, directly suppressing the red figure. At the same time, a golden heavenly saber condensed from spiritual power appeared in its hand. As it waved the sword, it slashed out a terrifying saber light. In the blink of an eye, the two figures had bombarded each other hundreds of times. The towering heaven-breaking peak was shattered by the aftershock of the battle and disappeared into the wilderness. What Wang Yi wanted to express through this battle was very clear and simple. All the spectators could directly feel the collision and attacks between the two extreme forces. They could clearly see who was stronger and who was weaker. The blood essence around the red figure erupted like a natural furnace. It was not affected by the suppression of spiritual power at all. As it waved its fists, it was still incomparably ferocious. The battle between the two figures continued. The golden heavenly saber slashed at the red figure with endless divine might, producing countless sparks and the sound of metal clashing. However, the red figure was actually unharmed. The red figure's fists were accompanied by the dragon and elephant phantom. Its fists tore through the void and smashed into the golden figure with terrifying vital energy. Buzz! The golden figure seemed to have transformed into another form. Its spiritual power instantly boiled, and its body seemed to have hidden into a mysterious space. It was not in the same latitude as the red figure. The power of the red figure's fists was enough to destroy the world, but it was unable to injure the golden figure at all. The battle continued. The two sides both had the upper hand, but neither side could completely overwhelm the other. Wang Yi seemed to have known that this would happen. He said calmly, "Did everyone see it clearly?" Before the spectators could recover from their daze, they were shocked speechless by the battle and Wang Yi's words. What they had seen and heard today was breaking their inherent views about martial arts and the iron law of the martial arts world. Who didn't know about this? The first reveal of this chapter happened through N to 0 to Velbayan. Martial artists in the first 3 ranks refined their bodies, while martial artists in the subsequent 3 ranks refined their chi. Meanwhile, martial artists in the last 3 ranks refined their spiritual power. Innate true chi was stronger than physical strength, and its quality was higher. By the same token, spiritual power was stronger and of higher quality than true chi. No one had expected that the physical strength, which was the lowest in the strength system, would actually be evenly matched with the spiritual power. Both had their advantages and disadvantages. Space and time seemed to have frozen. Everyone stood there in a daze for a long time. There was a long pause. The aftermath of the battle between the two figures shattered the wilderness within 1,000 kilometers. Only then did someone come back to his senses and ask in a hoarse voice, "Lord Venerable, why did this happen?" As the voice spoke, the others also came back to their senses and looked at Wang Yi at the same time. There seemed to be questions in the depths of their eyes. There was desire, the yearning to explore, and sincerity toward martial arts. They stared at Wang Yi without blinking as if they were waiting for an answer. When Wang Yi saw this, he did not waste any time and went straight to the point. The reason why you think that spiritual power is stronger than the other two powers is because when martial artists master spiritual power, their strength level is already at rank 7. In contrast, the levels of the other two powers are insufficient. Furthermore, spiritual power targets a person's spiritual will. That's why you have the illusion that spiritual power is the strongest and is of the highest quality. Everyone found it difficult to accept when they heard this. If these words were said by anyone else, they would definitely think that the person who spoke was trying to mislead the crowd and scare them. They would definitely reprimand that person and even scold them. However, these words were personally said by a venerable. They had also seen with their own eyes that the battle between two extreme powers had been evenly matched. Thus, they had no choice but to believe it. At this moment, Fang Mings, who had been silent all this while, suddenly asked, "Sir, may I ask why one's spiritual power will be at level 7 when one first masters the use of spiritual power?" Actually, when Fang Mings heard Wang Yi's words, he suddenly felt a flash of inspiration in his mind. However, he could not capture the key point behind Wang Yi's teaching. He simply felt that it was extremely crucial to his martial arts path. That was why he could not help but ask. Wang Yi turned to look at Fang Mings with a flash of admiration in his eyes. This question had hit the nail on the head. Although Wang Yi's martial arts cultivation was not of the same system as the martial arts of this world, with his realm and vision, he could still give guidance to these martial artists who were still in the 9-rank system. The question Fang Mings asked also addressed the shortcomings of the cultivation system he had discovered in this world. The martial arts of this world did not have any system at all. Instead of saying that it was cultivation, it was more like nurturing strength. Wang Yi waved his hand and stopped the two figures who were still attacking. Then, he chuckled and said, "That's a good question. After a martial artist enters rank 1, they can actually cultivate 3 powers at the same time." Wang Yi looked at Fang Mings, who was listening attentively, and could not help but ask with a smile, "When you were at the battle soldier rank, did you feel any true chi or spiritual power?" Upon hearing this, Fang Mings shook his head firmly and said respectfully, "Sir, I've never felt them before." Wang Yi seemed to know that Fang Mings would answer like this. He smiled and continued speaking. "Actually, true chi and spiritual power have always existed during this process. Although they aren't being manifested, they are always being nurtured. Fang Mings was a little confused when he heard this. He couldn't help but interrupt again. Sir, why do these two powers always exist, but we can only cultivate the power of the physical body? Wang Yi didn't mind other people asking questions. He replied patiently, since there are no complete cultivation methods for true qi and spiritual power, one can only make their body active by undergoing high-intensity training. Then, one can use a special stance technique to increase the speed at which their body absorbs spiritual power, as well as to temper their physical strength and power. At the same time, this can nurture their true qi and spiritual power. This is also known as body tempering. When Tang Zhenyu finished speaking, Fang Ming seemed to have understood something. His eyes seemed to flash as he fell into deep thought. Meanwhile, Wang Yi swept his gaze across everyone present and continued, take the battle warrior rank as an example. Do you think that you've mastered true qi because you've broken through to the battle warrior rank? Actually, it's the opposite. That's because, during the process of body refinement, your true qi would have been nurtured to its limit and manifested. When the strength of your true qi reaches level 4, only then can you advance to the battle warrior rank. Similarly, one doesn't master the use of spiritual power because they advance to the Grandmaster realm. It's because your spiritual power has been nurtured to its limit and manifested. Martial artists can only advance to the Grandmaster realm after the strength of their spiritual power reaches level 7. In other words, as long as you have a complete and systematic cultivation method, you can cultivate the three types of powers even when you're a rank 1 soldier. These were also the shortcomings and drawbacks of the martial arts system in this world that Wang Yi had discovered. When a body refinement martial artist reached the peak of rank 3 and they derived true qi, they would no longer cultivate their body. Instead, they would cultivate true qi. Meanwhile, when one's true qi reached the peak of rank 6 and derived spiritual power, they would no longer cultivate their true qi and would focus on their spiritual power. This also caused the status of their physical strength and true qi to be abnormally awkward. Although they were slowly becoming stronger as they cultivated, the difference between these two powers and their spiritual power would still be too great. Perhaps this was the reason why there were countless human geniuses in the entire Langyu domain, but there was only one connate expert, Venerable Ning Jing. The physical body was the foundation of cultivation, while true qi made up the details. If one's foundation was not strong enough and they didn't have sufficient details, how could the heaven ascension stage formed by one's cultivation be stable? How could one be powerful? How could one pluck the connate phala that could change the essence of their lives? This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. Even though Venerable Wang Yi had made this statement, the Grandmasters present could not accept what he had said. After all, that was the supreme power they had obtained after tempering themselves and passing through countless barriers. Today, someone actually told them that this power that they were proud of and invincible in all directions could actually be cultivated at rank -1. How could they accept it so easily? When Wang Yi saw their expressions, he knew what was going on. After all, it was indeed not easy to break through the inherent philosophy of a martial artist. Furthermore, action spoke louder than words. Thus, with a thought, the purple figure that was still in the outside world suddenly took a step forward and entered this space. This sudden commotion also attracted everyone's attention. After the purple figure appeared, it walked straight toward the other two figures. Wang Yi pointed and the auras of the three figures instantly became extremely chaotic. In a daze, their strength suddenly fell from the peak of rank 9 to the early stages of rank 9. Then, this descent of strength seemed to speed up as the cultivation level of the three figures fell crazily. Rank -8, rank -7, ellipsis, rank -1. When the aura of a martial artist could no longer be felt from the three figures, only then did the drop in ranks stop. Wang Yi swept his gaze across everyone present. He took in everyone's expressions. There was confusion, bitterness, excitement, hope, and realization. Just a few people were able to portray the various emotions of life. Everyone. Wang Yi's voice attracted everyone's attention. Then, he said, "It's very difficult for you to understand some things just by listening. Why don't I demonstrate the concepts to everyone?" Everyone looked at Wang Yi in confusion. However, before they could react, Wang Yi's fingertips suddenly emitted a three-colored divine light as he casually threw it at the three figures. The three figures seemed to have been enhanced by some mysterious power. Under everyone's gaze, they circulated their divine techniques at the same time. Then, they each performed a supreme and profound technique. The red figure automatically circulated the dragon-elephant wisdom technique. Then, the roars of dragons and elephants sounded from its body. Meanwhile, the purple figure automatically circulated the 9 suns divine art, and a vast sun surrounded it. As for the golden figure, it automatically circulated the little leaf flying dagger technique. Then, a red heavenly saber appeared above its head, emitting saber chi. In an instant, the cultivation techniques of the 3 figures broke through to level 1, while their martial arts realm also reached rank -1. Then, the momentum of their breakthrough became unst brother ble. The level of their cultivation technique in the realm of the figures kept rising. Their cultivation technique reached level 2, and their martial arts realm reached rank 2. Then, their cultivation technique advanced to level 3, while their martial arts realm progressed to rank 3. Ellipsis. Finally, their cultivation technique reached level 9, and their martial arts realm reached rank 9. When the 3 figures returned to the peak of rank 9, everyone could sense it. The body of the red figure was extremely strong. During this process, when its body reached a certain level of strength, it would give rise to true chi and spiritual power. The power of its physical body was most important, while its true chi and spiritual power were supplementary. As for the purple figure, its true chi was extremely strong. When it entered rank 1, it could cultivate true chi. As its true chi became stronger and reached a certain extent, it would give rise to spiritual power. At the same time, its physical strength would also be constantly tempered and strengthened. For this figure, its true chi was the main force, while its physical strength and spiritual power were supplementary. As for the golden figure, its spiritual power was extremely strong. Even though it was just rank 1, it could already cultivate spiritual power. As its spiritual power reached a certain level, it would produce true chi. At the same time, its physical strength would be constantly tempered and strengthened as well. Its spiritual power was the core force, while its physical body and true chi were complementary. The 3 figures seemed to have performed the principles of the world. Everyone seemed to have seen a different cultivation path evolving in front of them. Different emotions appeared in everyone's eyes. There was surprise, excitement, and comprehension. Then, their eyes all started to become blurry. Their pupils gradually lost focus, and their eyes slowly closed. After that, they sat cross-legged and fell into a deep state of enlightenment. Although they could not comprehend the supreme techniques performed by the 3 figures, the principles within them were interconnected. The techniques and principles contained in these techniques were the truths of martial arts to everyone. Everyone seemed to have found a path that belonged to them from this martial arts performance. Seeing this, Wang Yi did not say anything. His figure blurred and disappeared from this space. At the same time, Wang Yi, who was in the outside world, suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he could not help but smile. Although the martial arts of this world was backward and did not have a complete system, the comprehension level of the martial artists in this world was terrifyingly high. At this moment, the concept of time seemed as if it didn't exist. Perhaps a moment later, or perhaps a few days later, in that special space, someone would suddenly open their eyes and wake up from their enlightenment. Then, a glint would flash across their eyes and their figure would disappear. At the same time, a corner of this special space would suddenly shatter like a mirror. After that, the fragments would disappear into space with the disappearing figure. In the outside world, Shu Liancheng, who was sitting upright in his seat, suddenly opened his eyes. A glint flashed across his eyes. An invisible passageway that directly connected to that special space seemed to appear above his head. An inexplicable force surged out of the space and entered Shu Liancheng's body through the invisible passageway. Crack! The sound of something shattering suddenly came from Shu Liancheng's body, and his aura instantly boiled. His cultivation level, which had fallen to the early stages of rank 5 due to his old age, seemed to have regained its vitality and instantly soared. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation level returned to the mid-stage of rank 5. However, this momentum did not stop. Instead, his aura was still rising. Only when his realm reached the peak of rank 5 and was one step away from rank 6 did this terrifying increase stop. A shocking change suddenly happened to Shu Liancheng's body. His half-white head of hair returned to black as his cultivation level increased. His body was no longer as withered and weak as before. His blood essence soared into the sky like a furnace. Based on his current appearance, he did not look old at all. He was clearly a peak rank 5 expert middle-aged man. Feeling the surging and incomparably strong power, as well as his body that seemed to have regained its vitality and was shockingly energetic, his eyes could not help but water. The martial path that should have been completely severed because of his aging body was now miraculously reconnected. As a result, he still had another chance to make a breakthrough and ascend the supreme martial path in his lifetime. How could he not be excited? Shu Liancheng knew very well that it was all thanks to this young man that he had such an opportunity. Plop! Without any hesitation, Shu Liancheng simply knelt on the ground and lowered his head. This time, he was not kneeling because of Wang Yi's strength or Wang Yi's status as a venerable. He was kneeling because of Wang Yi's kindness, which allowed him to continue on the path of martial arts. He was also kneeling because of his passion for the path of martial arts. Of course, Wang Yi also noticed Shu Liancheng's current state and simply accepted his bow. Then, a wisp of true qi seeped out and lifted Shu Liancheng's body up. Wang Yi only nodded slightly at Shu Liancheng. Following that, he stretched out his hand and pointed at the special space in the air that had a corner shattered. He said calmly, "Continue watching." When Shu Liancheng heard this, his expression turned serious as he looked at the others in the space. In that space, the others were still comprehending with their eyes closed. They kept moving forward on the path they had found. From time to time, countless phantoms appeared and disappeared around them. These represented their comprehension and understanding of martial arts that had evolved in this space. Not long after, Fang Yuan and Tang Zhenyu opened their eyes almost at the same time, and their figures also disappeared from this space. It was very similar to Shu Liancheng's situation. The moment the two of them opened their eyes in the outside world, an invisible passageway connected them to that special space. Endless power poured into their bodies through this passage. Boom! They had all just entered their respective realms. One was at the early stage of rank -8, and the other was at the early stage of rank 7. As a result, with the infusion of the mighty power, their auras immediately increased crazily, instantly reaching the peak early stage of their respective realms. Without any pause, they broke through this minor level. Then, their cultivation levels continued to soar until they stopped at the advanced stage of their respective realms. Fang Yuan's eyes flashed with a sharp light. The spiritual power around him was violent. Furthermore, it actually contained an incomparably domineering sharpness that resembled an unsheathed immortal heavenly saber. Although he did not use a specific cultivation method, Fang Yuan had comprehended a wisp of the strongest saber intent from the little leaf flying dagger technique. In terms of spiritual power alone, Fang Yuan could already crush peak rank 8 or even early stage rank 9 grandmasters. Meanwhile, Tang Zhenyu's true qi was surging around his body at this moment. His originally calm and peaceful true qi had become abnormally violent, and wisps of Nine Suns true qi were faintly discernible. He had also comprehended a wisp of Nine Suns true qi from the Nine Suns divine art without any specific cultivation method. At this moment, the true qi in Tang Zhenyu's body had completely suppressed his spiritual power. It was very likely that he could crush all rank 7 and even rank 8 grandmasters with just the power of his true qi. The two of them felt the changes in their bodies and the supreme power they had comprehended in that mysterious space. They naturally knew that this was a shocking opportunity. Then, they knelt down towards Wang Yi with pious and fanatical expressions. Wang Yi also used his true qi to lift the two of them up. Then, they looked at the remaining two people in the space. At this moment, there were more and more phantoms in the space. The two people who were still sitting cross-legged seemed to be under great pressure. Veins bulged on their bodies, and sweat kept dripping from their foreheads, soaking the ground under their feet. Finally, Fang Ming seemed to be unable to hold on. When he was about to open his eyes, his figure had already disappeared. Then, the entire space suddenly collapsed in all directions, and a third of it disappeared. As Fang Ming's disappeared, Wu Shuang could not hold on anymore. Her figure disappeared in a daze. At the same time, the entire space collapsed and completely turned into fragments. 1/3 of the space was completely absorbed by the invisible passageway that appeared above Wu Shuang's head. The other third of the spatial fragments instantly appeared in the corner of the villa, above the head of the silver-winged cloud leopard. The moment that special space disappeared, Wang Yi suddenly felt a little dazed. He felt that he had lost his perception of the surrounding world and could no longer control the power of the world. However, Wang Yi did not feel anything about this. After all, he did not rely on the power of the world to survive. Even if he could not control it, it would not affect his combat strength. At this moment, Fang Ming's, Wu Shuang, and the silver-winged cloud leopard hiding in the corner opened their eyes at the same time. Fang Mingzi's aura surged, and his cultivation directly broke through to the early stages of Rank 5. All kinds of phenomena appeared around him while a dragon and an elephant protected him. The air was filled with the aura of 9 suns true chi, and layers of heat waves appeared in the scorching air. This is from the SoundStories audiobook YouTube channel. The ancestral cavity between his eyebrows appeared and disappeared as if an invisible force was surrounding him with a sharp intent to kill everything. Fang Ming's had actually taken advantage of this opportunity to directly raise the Dragon Elephant Wisdom technique to level -1. He was only missing an opportunity to step into level 2. What was even more appalling was that he had actually comprehended a wisp of the 9 suns true chi from the 9 suns divine art. He had also comprehended a wisp of the sharp saber intent from the little leaf flying dagger technique that could destroy everything. Moreover, he even used that wisp of saber intent as a guide to directly produce a trace of spiritual power in his ancestral aperture. Although this trace of spiritual power was very weak, it really existed. It could be said that ever since the revival of spirit chi in this world, Fang Ming's was very likely the first martial artist to possess spiritual power before stepping into the Grandmaster realm. The door to the Grandmaster realm had already been completely opened for him. As long as he had enough strength, he would be able to step into the Grandmaster realm without any barriers. With the enhancement of these 3 supreme powers, it would probably not be difficult for Fang Ming's to fight a ranked 6 warrior. Wang Yi could not help but sigh. Such talent and comprehension were really terrifying. Meanwhile, Wu Shuang, who opened her eyes at the same time as Fang Ming's, was not as stunning as Fang Ming's, who had comprehended 3 true powers at the same time. However, she had absorbed a third of the entire space. At this moment, dragon and elephant phantoms appeared around her. Her aura fluctuated, and her body glowed as if she was undergoing some special refinement and transformation. Boom! Wu Shuang's aura suddenly soared by several times, and the surrounding dragons and elephants turned into dazzling divine power. Then, they all surged into her body crazily like moths to a flame. Her flesh, blood, and bones seemed to have been refined into a powerful force. There were faint roars of dragons and elephants in her cells, and her body had become like an immortal divine gold that emitted boundless divine light. Another supreme power was refined in her body as if she had completed a transformation. With a slight tremble of her body, unfathomable power would appear as if it could break through the void. At this moment, Wu Shuang's physical strength underwent a mysterious qualitative change and she stepped into the peak realm that countless grandmasters dreamed of. She had also become one step closer to the Conate realm. While everyone was still immersed in their gains, in a corner where no one noticed, although the silver-winged cloud leopard did not comprehend anything, it had still absorbed a full third of the fragments from the special space. The huge amount of energy contained in these fragments was enough for it to take a step further and become a top-notch beast king. After all, the entire special space was completely formed by the power of the world and endless spiritual energy. Actually, among the cultivation techniques that Wang Yi had learned, there was no method to create and use such a special space. However, he had comprehended it by luck after reaching the peak of his realm during the battle with Demon Venerable Tiandu. His efforts were self-evident. Wang Yi was also quite surprised. This special space was really terrifying and had actually helped them improve so much. However, it was a little troublesome. After using this technique, it would cause the user to temporarily lose control over the power of the world. This was nothing to Wang Yi, and it did not affect Wang Yi's combat strength. However, to a Conate Venerable, this was very fatal. In a battle between 2 Venerables, if one could control the power of the world while the other lost control of this power, then the Venerable with control over the power of the world would have a 30% chance of winning before the battle even began. These people who had taken a huge step on the path of martial arts were naturally extremely grateful to Wang Yi. Next, Wang Yi answered all their questions about cultivation. Actually, Wang Yi was not preaching to everyone on a whim. It was not a sudden decision either. When he saw the endless ferocious beasts surrounding the city and the cold corpses on the city wall that day, a thought surfaced in Wang Yi's mind. He wanted to teach martial arts. He wanted to bring hope to this era of blood and chaos, and to the humans who were struggling to survive. The martial arts of this world did not have a complete cultivation system, so he set up a system for this world. There was no supreme cultivation method for martial arts in this world, so he would be the guide and teach the world. Meanwhile, everyone had gained too much from Wang Yi and was too embarrassed to continue disturbing him. They stood up and prepared to leave. However, to everyone's surprise, Wu Shuang was unwilling to leave. She said that before Yang Jingxuan left, he had ordered her to follow Wang Yi's orders. Seeing that Wu Shuang's attitude was firm, Wang Yi did not pursue the matter. After all, there were many rooms in the villa. He could just find a place for her to stay. As for whether Su Xia would be jealous or if it would be inconvenient, that was not the case. Although Wu Shuang looked young and seemed as if she was only in her 30s, that was because she was strong enough. Her body had undergone reverse growth, allowing her to maintain her appearance. Actually, she was much older than Su Xia's parents. She was senior enough to be Su Xia's grandmother. 3 days later, in the courtyard of Wang Yi's villa, the ancient tea tree seemed to have matured. Its huge canopy almost covered the entire courtyard, blocking out the hot summer day. Under the ancient tea tree, Wang Yi and Su Xia sat opposite each other at the coffee table, while Wu Shuang stood behind them like a servant. In these 3 days, except for some special places, the entire Kang city had basically been rebuilt. Furthermore, the Taoist temple just so happened to be one of these special places. As it was very difficult to rebuild some special cultivation equipment and venues, the construction of the Taoist temple had not been completed yet. Thus, the Taoist temple was still on holiday. Thus, Su Xia stayed by Wang Yi's side. On the coffee table, a pot of spiritual spring water was being slowly boiled by a fire. Wisps of steam rose with spiritual energy and kept transforming into various shapes in the air. Meanwhile, a black jade tea set was placed at the side of the table. Seeing that the spiritual spring water in the pot was already boiling, Wu Shuang bent her legs slightly and suddenly shot up. Then, a few pieces of green glowing tea leaves were plucked from the ancient tea tree. This is from the SoundStories audiobook YouTube channel. Then, she took out 2 black jade-colored cups from the tea set and placed 2 tea leaves in each cup before pouring the boiling spiritual spring water into them. Only then did she place the brewed tea in front of the couple. Su Xia was not used to Wu Shuang's attitude. No matter what, Wu Shuang was more powerful than the guardian. However, Wu Shuang was respectful to her as if the latter were a servant to the former. Su Xia had also advised her not to do this, but Wu Shuang was determined. In the end, she had no choice but to let Wu Shuang be. After a long time, she eventually adapted to it. Seeing that Wu Shuang had made tea for her, Su Xia stood up and pulled Wu Shuang's arm. She smiled and said, "Sister Wu Shuang, sit down too. There are many tea leaves. Try a cup of tea." The moment Su Xia finished speaking, she was about to get up and make a cup for Wu Shuang. However, before Su Xia could do anything, Wu Shuang stopped her and said with a smile, "Thank you, madam, I can do it myself." At the same time, she took out another black jade cup from the tea set and placed it in front of her. She also made himself a cup of tea according to the previous steps. Wang Yi watched from the side and did not say anything. He only chuckled and picked up the teacup in front of him to take a sip. To be honest, the tea leaves from this ancient tea tree tasted good when brewed with spiritual spring water. At this moment, Su Xia and Wu Shuang also picked up their teacups and took a sip at the same time. Instantly, they felt that their minds had become clear. Some things that they usually could not understand, especially regarding martial arts, had become extremely easy to comprehend. Wang Yi finished the tea in his hand in one gulp. Then, he looked at Su Xia and said with a smile, "I'm preparing to visit Venerable Ning Jing in Langya County City tomorrow. Let's go together." Su Xia's body stiffened upon hearing this. At the thought of going to see Venerable Ning Jing who Wang Yi had mentioned, even though she was gradually used to her noble status, she still felt a little guilty and couldn't help but retreat. This is from the SoundStories audiobook YouTube channel. After all, that person was a big shot who had guarded the Langya domain for a long time. She was the ruler of all the human cities in the Langya domain. If this was back in ancient times, she would be an emperor-like figure. Her words and actions could determine the fate of tens of billions of humans. Furthermore, if she went to Langya County City to see Venerable Ning Jing, it would be equivalent to the daughter of a rich family paying respects to the emperor in ancient times. How could she be indifferent about this matter? Eventually, Su Xia said hesitantly, "Maybe I shouldn't go." Of course, Wang Yi knew that Su Xia was concerned. He pulled her hand and said with a smile, "With me around, you can go anywhere in the world." Upon hearing Wang Yi's words and feeling the warmth from his palm, Su Xia was a little stunned. Then, a bright smile appeared on her face. She did not say anything and only nodded heavily. Meanwhile, Wu Shuang, who was sitting at the side, also looked excited. This venerable was finally preparing to personally go to Langya County City with his wife. This was too formal. Now that the calamity of the young god race was imminent, the earlier these two supreme venerables could meet, the more beneficial it would be for the countless humans in the vast Langya domain. Wu Shuang stood up and cupped her fists respectfully at Su Xia. On behalf of Venerable Ning Jing, welcome to Langya County City. Su Xia also stood up and replied generously, Sister Wu Shuang, you're too polite. Meanwhile, Wang Yi smiled at Wu Shuang and said, there's nothing much to do in Kang City now. You can return to Langya County City. Please tell Venerable Ning Jing that I will definitely go tomorrow. Actually, when Wu Shuang heard that Wang Yi was preparing to personally visit Langya County City, she couldn't wait to return and report this news to Venerable Ning Jing. Thus, what Wang Yi had just said was exactly what she wanted. She hurriedly bowed and said, Lord Venerable, don't worry. Wu Shuang will definitely deliver your words to Venerable Ning Jing. As soon as she finished speaking, she left in a hurry as if her tail had been burned. Wait a minute, Wang Yi seemed to have thought of something and called out to stop her. Upon hearing this, Wu Shuang stopped in her tracks. A look of confusion flashed across her face, but she still walked back obediently. Then, she bowed and asked, May I ask what other orders you have, Venerable? Wang Yi casually took out a washbasin-sized green jade rock from the system space and said with a smile, Wait a moment. Wu Shuang's pupils constricted when she saw this magical method of producing something out of thin air. Even with her strength and status, she had never heard of such a magical method. She watched as Wang Yi stretched out his hand and rubbed it against the green jade rock a few times. Countless rock fragments fell. In the blink of an eye, the wash basin-sized green jade rock became the size of a notebook. Its surface was as smooth as a mirror, and it was square and angular. A wisp of 9 suns true qi that was like a blade appeared on the tip of Wang Yi's right hand. Then, he used his finger as a pen and started writing on the stone slab. In a short while, the stone slab became filled with dense words. Wang Yi casually handed the stone slab to Wu Shuang and said with a smile, It's just that it's a little rude for me to ask you to pass on a message. This is a visiting card that I have personally written. Please pass it to Venerable Ning Jing. Although it was a visiting card, the contents were actually very simple. The general meaning was that Wang Yi had accepted the invitation from Venerable Ning Jing. He will visit tomorrow with his wife, Su Xia. Wu Shuang took the visiting card. Then, her gaze swept across the words on it. She could not help but be shocked when she felt the 9 suns true qi that could easily burn and kill a top grandmaster like her. This was too terrifying and frightening. She collected her thoughts and put the visiting card away. Then, Wu Shuang bowed again and left the courtyard. In the main hall of the venerable palace in Langya County City, the tooth of an unknown powerful beast had been carved into a throne, and the white-robed Venerable Ning Jing sat on it. A hint of killing intent flashed across her beautiful face. She stretched out 2 fingers and gently touched the space between her eyebrows. It was obvious that she was in a bad mood. No one had expected this. The invincible venerable who protected countless human cities in the Langya domain and suppressed ferocious beasts everywhere was actually such a beautiful woman. Below the tall throne, in the middle of the hall, the endless power of the world transformed into chains that restrained a figure. This figure was 9 meters tall and completely formed from a black fog. Venerable Ning Jing's gaze was deep and no one could see through her thoughts. She stared at the figure below and said indifferently, Do you have anything to say? This martial artist from the Yang God race, who was at the peak of rank 9, was the 7th Yang God expert that Yang Jingyuan and the others had captured after obtaining information about that venerable from Kang City. The 6 martial artists from the Yang God race that had been captured earlier were all at rank 9. Since she could not get anything out of them, and they would sooner or later be a disaster in her hands, she killed them one by one. Venerable Ning Jing simply could not imagine how many experts from the Yang God race had invaded Langya County City. Although Langya County City was the center of the entire human territory in the Langya region and also the center of power, there were too many Yang God experts hidden here. In just a few days, they had captured 7 experts. Furthermore, these were only those who had been captured. No one knew how many others had been hidden and had not been captured. If there were Yang God venerables among them, she would definitely believe it. Moreover, this was only within the territory of Langya County City. No one knew how many Yang God experts were hiding in the entire Langya region. Just the thought of it made her scalp tingle with fear. The Yang God expert, who was bound by the chains, did not care that he was facing a human connate venerable. He could not help but sneer. Human venerable, I advise you to let me go now. Otherwise, when our elders descend, they will definitely massacre countless people in Langya County City. Even if you have the strength of a venerable, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape death. Venerable Ning Jing's willowy eyebrows immediately stood up when she heard this. A terrifying killing intent brewed in her heart. The matter of the Yang God race had disturbed her for the past few days, and it had already exhausted her patience. However, she subconsciously ignored the fact that this Yang God race expert in front of her had mentioned an additional word, elders, that the previous experts never mentioned before. Seeing that the other party was so uncooperative, she no longer suppressed the killing intent in her heart. With a thought, a long sword formed from the power of the world and burning with the terrifying aura of the sun appeared out of thin air in front of the Yang God expert. After killing the first few Yang God martial artists, Venerable Ning Jing also discovered some patterns. These Yang God martial artists who existed as spiritual bodies would be most severely affected by Yang attribute power. The sword floated in the air and slowly stabbed toward the expert's forehead with terrifying flames. Reporting. As this voice sounded, a man who looked like a servant hurried into the hall. Upon seeing who it was, Venerable Ning Jing frowned slightly. With a wave of her hand, she scattered the sword floating in the air and said indifferently, "What's the matter?" The sword was about to pierce through the space between his eyebrows and the terrifying flames were about to reach him, but they disappeared at this moment. As a result, the Yang God expert who was bound by the chain suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. He felt like he had survived a calamity. When the servant who had just entered heard this, he bowed slightly and said respectfully to the throne, "Venerable Grandmaster Wu Shuang has returned from Kang City. She said that she has something to ask of you." Her long, white fingers tapped rhythmically on the armrest of the throne. Venerable Ning Jing seemed to be deep in thought. After a while, she said calmly, "Let her in." The servant received the order and turned to retreat out of the hall. A moment later, Wu Shuang hurried in. Her gaze swept over the tall figure bound by chains in the center of the hall. It seemed as if a thought occurred to her, and her eyes flashed. However, her gaze did not stay on the other party for long. Instead, she bowed towards the throne and said, "Greetings, Lord Venerable." A faint smile appeared on Venerable Ning Jing's face as she said, "Wu Shuang, weren't you in Kang City? Why were you in such a hurry to come back? Is there something important?" A smile crossed Wu Shuang's face when she heard the voice from the throne. She took out the visiting card that Wang Yi had given her previously and held it in her palms. She said, "Venerable Wang Yi from Kang City will be bringing his wife to Langya County City tomorrow. This is the visiting card that he wrote for you." The corners of Venerable Ning Jing's mouth curled up slightly. She stretched out her jade-like palm and waved it gently. Then, the visiting card in Wu Shuang's hand was absorbed by her. When Venerable Ning Jing sensed the Nine Suns' true chi from the words, a different kind of smile flashed across her flawless face. It also made her mood, which had been very bad because of the Yang God race for the past few days, instantly improve. She couldn't help but mutter, "Fellow Taoist Wang is really meticulous." Although her voice was soft, Wu Shuang could hear it clearly. A look of confusion flashed across her eyes. She could not understand why Venerable Ning Jing called Venerable Wang Yi meticulous when they had yet to meet. Perhaps because Venerable Ning Jing was in an extremely good mood, she looked at Wu Shuang's current appearance and said with a smile, "Do you know why fellow Taoist Wang asked you to bring back this visiting card?" When Wu Shuang heard this, the confusion in her eyes deepened. What other intentions could have been hidden in this visiting card? Although she couldn't figure it out, she still probed, "I think Venerable Wang Yi feels that this is more formal. This is also a form of respect for Lord Venerable." Upon hearing Wu Shuang's words, Venerable Ning Jing couldn't help but shake her head. She smiled and said, "This is just one of the meanings." After saying that, she looked at Wu Shuang and asked again, "Did you feel anything unusual from this visiting card?" Wu Shuang knew the answer to this question. After all, she had already sensed it when Wang Yi handed her the visiting card. Now that Venerable Ning Jing had asked, she did not hesitate and said, "I did sense it." The words contained the power of extreme yang. Venerable Ning Jing was not surprised by Wu Shuang's words. She stretched out her finger and gently tapped on the visiting card. Boom! The phantoms of the Nine Suns which contained boundless divine might were directly drawn out from Wang Yi's words. Then, they appeared in the void of the hall, emitting a supreme power that seemed to be able to burn all filth and evil in the world. It caused the temperature in the hall to rise by dozens of degrees, and waves of heat rose in the air. However, the power that overflowed from the sun phantoms shone in the hall, causing the restrained young god expert to roar in pain. The black fog on his body became much thinner. The corners of Wu Shuang's mouth twitched as she felt the terrifying power emanating from the sun phantoms. She knew that the power contained in the visiting card was very strong, but she did not expect it to be so strong. Along the way, she actually carried such a terrifying thing back. If the power of the visiting card had accidentally been unleashed midway, she, a top grandmaster, would have probably been burned to ashes in an instant. She would have become the shortest-lived top expert in the Langyu domain. Venerable Ning Jing directly ignored the young god expert's roar and stared at the sun phantoms in the void. Then, she said indifferently, as for fellow Taoist Wang's second intention, I'm afraid that he had also intended to use this visiting card to protect you. After all, the beasts have just suffered heavy losses in Kang City. It's very likely that a supreme expert will go out to hunt human experts to take revenge on us. With this item on you, even if a top-notch beast king attacks you on your journey, it can still ensure your safety, let alone if you encounter beasts of the same level as you. When Wu Shuang heard this, she nodded with a stiff expression. She suddenly felt that his brain was not working well enough. She actually did not understand such a simple meaning. Seeing that Wu Shuang understood, Venerable Ning Jing continued, as for fellow Taoist Wang's final intention. When Wu Shuang heard this, there was a hint of confusion in her stiff expression. Was there another intention behind this card? If it weren't for the fact that she was in front of the Venerable, she really wanted to complain. If there was anything, could he just say it directly? Why did he have to go through so much trouble? This was just a visiting card. At most, the materials used were a little precious as it was a letter personally written by a Venerable. However, why were there so many twists and turns? Halfway through her sentence, Venerable Ning Jing extended a finger and pointed at the 9 sun phantoms. Boom! A burst of extreme yang power was drawn out by this finger. Then it was as if this power had transformed into a long sword burning with terrifying flames. As Venerable Ning Jing's fingertips moved, the sword also moved in the void. Exclamation mark. Finally, Venerable Ning Jing's fingertips landed on the young god expert, and her sword slashed at him from high above in the sky. As soon as the sword made contact with the other party, it turned into an endless sea of fire that enveloped the 9-meter-tall figure. Roar! In the center of the flames, the young god expert, who was constantly being burned, was in so much pain that his facial features had already begun to distort. He let out roars of pain like that of a ferocious beast. At this moment, Venerable Ning Jing continued, this is fellow Taoist Wang's final meaning. Wu Shuang was a little confused and did not know what this scene had to do with the last layer of meaning. She could not help but ask, I'm slow-witted. Please enlighten me, Venerable. When Venerable Ning Jing heard this, she pointed at the young god race expert who was still screaming in pain and said indifferently, do you know who he is? Wait till next part.